is going to be your Clash Royale champion. Takes it. Sergio Ramos wins.
Nothing to stop the Hog Rider. It's going to get swing on the tombstones. That's it. Nova is the first ever CRL World Champions. And there you have it. The fire goes up. It's a Ghost this time. 293. That's it. Nothing to do with it. Team Liquid is going to be your CRL champion.
Team Liquid is done and searching the goal.
117 HP remaining. EQ trying to make room. Team Queso completes the reverse sweep, and they are your 2020 Clash Royale League World Champions.
7 months of ladder, 7 months of gameplay, 7 months of qualifiers, and here we are in the 7th out of 8 monthly finals, where we have some players who've pretty much already punched their ticket to World Finals, and some players who are scrambling for those last chances to clinch a shot at a World Championship. Hello and welcome. I'm Rich Slayton, joining me as always, my good buddy Andrew Guy, to talk you through the action here at our Clash Royale League monthly final.
That's right, man. Very, very excited to be here, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are excited to see what the Goblin Drill is going to do in competition this month. You've seen it on ladder, you've seen it on Grand Challenges, I'm sure you've seen it on YouTube, but we'll get into that in just 1 second after we take a look at our journey so far.
Clash Royale League 2021 is here, and this year, it's every player for themselves in an all-out free-for-all duel for the throne. It all begins with the Trophy Race, a monthly event where everyone, and we mean everyone, faces off and battles their way to the top of the monthly leaderboard. Millions of players will compete, but only the top 1,000 move on to the monthly qualifiers. The 8 competitors that conquer the competition advance to the monthly finals, where the only thing left to do is prove that you're the best of the best. The winner goes home with a royal amount of cash prizes and competitive points. After 8 rounds of non-stop Clash Royale action, the top 24 players from the competitive leaderboard will automatically qualify for the World Finals. Fell just short of making it? Don't worry, it's not over yet. The top remaining players on the leaderboard who just missed out on qualifying will be invited to a last chance qualifier for a shot at 8 remaining World Final spots. In the end, the finalists will duke it out for their share of the prize pool. Clash Royale League 2021 will determine who's got what it takes to sit on the throne and reign as the world champion.
It's been a long road here. A lot of changes, of course, for 2021. I think that I can speak for myself and Andrew here, saying that one of the best changes has been bringing in our good friends Eric and AC to round out this casting team and make it a full foursome. Let's start with you, Eric. Goblin Drill, rearing its head in the monthly final this month. How do you prepare deck-wise to face, you know you're going to face Drill probably 1 out of those three games?
I think it's actually more important how you're going to use it than prepare against it in this type of format. I think the biggest key here is that you actually have to guarantee yourself 1 win per set with that Goblin Drill deck. If you have that deck and you lose with it, you put yourself in a really bad position, especially if you are Bruzani here or something like that coming in against Molite. To me, Molite plus Tesla plus Goblin Drill equals win. So you have to make sure that you can get that on your end as well.
Josh, do you think the Goblin Drill favors cycle players more than beatdown players, or is it just you play drill and you're fine?
I think it's basically you play drill and you're fine. It's nice for the tank players because it allows them to stick with, 2 different tank decks, and they throw in the drill deck, and then it kind of catches them off guard, and you can't really prepare just for the tank decks. But at the end of the day, like, these cycle players are so good, they never make mistakes, especially someone like Muhammad Light, where it's a toss-up, and I know we're going to be seeing it in every single set.
Well, excited to see you guys back here in a minute. But first, a few things to take care of at the start of today's show, Andrew, as we have to go take a look at what we're doing today. I think people are pretty familiar, but it's always nice to hear you break it down.
That's right. Our duel format, maybe you love it, maybe you hate it, but I'm sure this month it's going to be taking care of you because each player has to bring 4 decks to this competition. With 32 unique cards, each deck can only be played once per match, and it's a best 2 out of 3, which means every single individual can only use Goblin Drill once per set. And I know we've talked about it a lot at the top of the show, but it is such a dominant win condition right now, Rich. It feels it would be unjust to not give it its due service. We've been waiting for it for a couple months, and it's finally here today in round 7.
We'll see how it shakes out for these players trying to play through this double elimination bracket. And we talked about players who've pretty much already punched their ticket to World Finals. Nobody but Mohamed Light, top of the ladder right now, most points, facing off against a newcomer, 16-year-old Bruzani, making his debut here at the monthly final, and then 2 CRL veterans in Surge TS and Dark Angel. Sandbox coming off some big wins up against his countryman Coco, the log bait player, and then both guys, 2 guys I think are both good wild card picks in Famous Kid and Vitor.
Yeah, that's a really fun 4th matchup. And you talk about Mohamed Light and the points. Let's take a look here at how it's broken down. He's been a monthly champion before, which means he's walked away with 20K and 100 additional points. But this is how it goes. First place gets 20, 10, second place gets 10, then 60 or 6,004. I swear I do know my numbers. And then, of course, the leaderboard points here, which we're going to see in just a second on the global leaderboard. Mohamed Light has almost 900 points. And with another win here, he has obviously very much secured himself at our World Finals. But there's a lot of people right behind him, including someone like Sandbox, who needs to lock it in before he has to play in what could be a last chance qualifier for him.
Yeah, there's a big difference in making that top 24, guaranteeing your spot at World Finals, versus having to play through that very, very difficult last chance qualifier. Of course, we'll have more information on how that breaks down fairly soon, but it's going to be a challenge for those players who didn't punch their ticket all the way through to the end. And Andrew, you talk about players trying to scramble up that. In those last few moments, we talked about Sandbox, we have Famous Kid, we have Vitor, Surge TS. A lot of these guys getting more of their points on ladder, but a big chance to add a ton of points here today.
That's right. And speaking of today, we have our match of the day set. We get one every single day, every single monthly finals. And today is absolutely no different. Is it going to be Surge, TS, or Dark Angel taking our match of the day? Let us know down below in the chat. Hashtag Surge or hashtag Dark Angel. We'll get all those votes tallied up by the time that they play in our 3rd matchup. And we'll get to see, are you guys right or are we right? Are we all wrong? Who knows? But it is going to be a very, very exciting matchup between what you said just a moment ago, Rich. 2 former CRL veterans, and of course those live formats.
Yeah, it's going to be very curious to see how those 2 guys battle out. Of course, we have tons of matches today, tons of matches tomorrow to crown our monthly champion in this 7th of 8 finals, and it's going to be a great one. But Andrew, you're going to have to come back again a little bit later today to catch up on some of that action. For now, I'm going to go ahead and bring in world champion coach of Team Liquid, Eric Benamou, who you also find him, I think it's at EB7 on Twitch or Twitter. You're all over the place. There you go, at EB7 on Twitter. Eric, this is a really compelling list of competitors. You have Mo, who doesn't need any more points, but certainly would like more money, and then a bunch of guys scrambling to secure those spots in the top 24.
Yeah, and I think that actually the featured match of the day is that most important match when it comes to points, right? They're in like 25th and then 30th. Those are the big time numbers that you need points to move up in. So I think that's the big deal. And this, like you said, Mo is already in no matter what. There's obviously some prestigious factor to finishing first place at the end of 8 months, and it does give you that confidence moving forward. But I think it's those other matches where the points are really on the line.
Let's go ahead and jump on in. The Prince of Egypt, bottom of your screen, out of New Jersey, USA, making his debut here at the monthly final. Bruzani, top of your screen, who describes himself as a 2.6 player.
I'm excited, man. It's been a while since we got a brand new player, brand new face in the scene. Usually we do know them a bit, but he actually just turned 16 and old enough to play this, and this is his first month. So to make it here, congratulations, but you are going up against Molite, and he does have Tesla starting off, and he does have Drill.
Yeah, drill cycle for Mo Light. So, you can tweet you don't like it, but you're still going to play anyway. So there goes Mohamed Light in game number 1. And I saw some people teasing Mo on Twitter, encouraging Bruzani to Golem first play him. We'll see if that's in the books for him at some point in the moment. Right now, it's Dark Prince and the Mega Knight. So with those and arrows, certainly some decent Goblin Drill counters.
Yeah, and this Mega Knight is a very, very smart play out of him. I like the choice here with the Mega Knight. Obviously does activate King Tower beautifully there, Mo, but also if you're Bruzani here, in my opinion, you shouldn't put too much onto this match. Mo is expected to win when he's using a Tesla drill deck. If you are able to win this one, it's a huge boost, but you shouldn't get too down on yourself regardless of the outcome of this first match.
Bruzani taking the lead right now, 22-94 to 22-35 as the first minute 40 passes here. And you know, what a welcome into CRL. You come in and your first game is up against the consensus #1 guy in the year, points leader, and probably, hard to debate, the best player in the world of 2021.
Yeah, alongside Lucas, I don't think there's anyone that goes into that discussion of top 1 for the in the world in this year, at least. Obviously, when we go back in time, we have Surge and more than everyone, but this year it's been utter dominance from both of them. And if you want to make a statement, you want to start off your career right, beating Mo is definitely the way to do that.
Fireball value there in the middle, but drill in now for Bruzani, left-hand side. It has to come out with a Bomber rather than Valk for Mo Light. Bomber and Log, so just like that, Bruzani way ahead on Elixir by about a mile as we go into our final 30 seconds of regulation.
Yeah, and way ahead on Elixir for him is a lot bigger than for Mo being ahead on Elixir, because all those cards are easily defended by the Mega Knight. But on the other hand, you do have to end up spending quite a bit onto that Mega Knight, especially if it does jump here. But what you do see is a lot of these low Elixir cost cards, he is defending very well with the Fire Spirit and the Skellies and the Log, but all that actually ends up adding up to a ton of Elixir, because you still need the Tesla and you still need the Valk, and that's why he's down so much.
Up on damage right now, though, is Mo Light, 1883 to 1378 as we go into sudden death overtime. And we'll see what that overall sort of bridge spam variant of drill can accomplish here.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for him to make this damage back, in the sense that obviously Mo has a quicker cycle. He'll always have Valk and Tesla ready for your Mega Knight pushes. And even then, if he does have to take some damage from the drill, he could just hold it until it goes a little bit under that half health and then log it, right? So there's just way too much on Mo's side to deal with everything, especially moving forward in this matchup. You know how good he is at defending. A lot of people would be a little bit stressed going into triple Elixir with such a heavy deck. I don't think that's the case for Mo.
Bandit down. Can he get the skeletons off the board? He does, but no connection to get in. Valkyrie still nice and healthy, 994 to 769. Perfect defense so far here by Mo as we go into triple Elixir.
Yeah, now he's gonna cycle 2 drills for every 1 drill that Bruzani has, and if that's if he wants to go on offense. He could also play this very defensively and even drill Tesla drill, right? Defense over and over and over again. He does have Fireball as well. Here we go, first drill coming in, no Mega Knight in cycle either. This is gonna be an easy defense. You forced out extra defense out of Bruzani, so that makes your own a lot easier.
35 seconds left, Lot at the bridge here. Inferno Dragon trying to burn down that Tesla, might get it done after the drill goes to the back. Doesn't defend drill though as well as Bruzani, so the Dark Prince does come out. Fireball not going to knock back a Dark Prince. Arrows in. This does feel like the end, Eric.
It does feel like the end, and even though this is a best of 3, like I said, you don't want to get too down on yourself. This is a match that I expect Mo to win every single time he plays it this weekend. A Tesla drill deck, there couldn't be anything better. Like you said, he might say he doesn't like it on Twitter, but when I look at Mo's deck pool and I look at his playstyle, there could be no better card to come into the meta.
So there you go, Mohamed Light taking game number 1, and Bruzani taking a deep look into the camera there. And maybe having to resettle himself for game number 2. Very different playing on camera for the first time, playing with an audience the first time, playing against a caliber player like Mo in your very first game at this level.
Yeah, and this King Tower activation, obviously beautiful. We've seen Mo do this, I think, 40 times this year. Every time he plays against Mega Knight, he finds a way to activate King Tower. The positive thing for Bruzani is that he wasn't running Mega Knight Graveyard, I guess. That's the only positive I could take out of that.
Yeah, that certainly was the better situation of the two, but in the end, you talked about the cycle, and we see it over and over again that the defensive answers always are there for Mohamed Light. Bruzani just not quite able to find a way to battle through. Even at one point, he was up, I believe, 7 elixir at one point and couldn't turn it into anything significant. So great defensive play here by Mo. Drill out on both sides. So what's your money on for Mother Witch in game number 2?
I really do like Mother Witch. I still think it's very viable, especially I like it out of Mo's side. I think a lot of people might try a little bit heavier decks against him. We might even see some Golem Clone like we saw in the qualifiers. People were starting to use that type of deck against Lucas, against Mo, and it is a good deck. But if you do have Mother Witch on your side and they clone those bats and then everything just gets cloned, you're gonna spawn in so many of those hoggies that it actually ends up working really well. I do want to see something a little bit heavier on Mo's side. You're giving us a lot of looks of the same thing, but you're already in first place. You're already qualified into World Finals. It's time to get that practice, and there's no better practice than here. Yes, you still want to win, but this is very valuable experience into those heavy decks.
Yeah, maybe a little Ram Rider might be sort of a mid-level version rather than going all the way beat down. Let's go ahead and jump into game number 2 here in just a moment, and we'll see what Mo's got going on. Bruzani does describe himself as a cycle player. His 2 favorite players to watch are Jack and Mugi. So, you know, and here we see Spear Goblins. I don't expect to see Bruzani go with anything really heavy here.
Yeah, you're not going to go with anything really heavy, but on the other side, you do know that he doesn't have Tesla, which is okay if you are Bruzani, but that means that he's probably going to have something else, right? A cage, or it could be a P.E.K.K.A deck. It could be a lot of these things. The one positive thing that Mo has, apart from his technical ability and his deck pool and everything, is the guy by his side. Julesy is the best analyst in the moment when it comes to Clash Royale. So anything you're gonna throw at him, he's gonna have an answer to most likely. I've seen very few bad matchups for Mo ever since CRL started.
So here we go. It is Ram Rider for Mo Light. So bully to me for a good pick on this one. Ram Rider with Mother Witch. Interesting variation here out of the Egyptian.
Very interesting, but I do like it. This is a little bit of what first off, good call on the Ram Rider.
Thank you.
But on the other end, this is a little bit of what I was talking about. This is your time to really see what you can bring, what works, what doesn't work. You have nothing on the line other than obviously $20,000, which is a lot of money, but most importantly is that World Finals at the end of the year. You want to make sure that you are in the best position there, and this is a way to do it. Try different things. I know a lot of people will do this once they're locked in, and I really like this call out of him.
So Valk now down in front of one cannon cart. Interesting. You know, it looks like Mo is almost playing a Royal Giant deck just with the Ram Rider instead.
Yeah, this is a very odd deck. It actually ends up working pretty nicely for him just because of all the splash damage that he does have. Even though he doesn't have a big spell for the Hoggies, he always will have either Ghost or Dark Prince there to mitigate the damage, as well as that Mother Witch is not that bad in this matchup. With those Spear Goblins, you don't allow him to pressure on the bridge at all in this game. Every time you pressure on the bridge, we've seen it in the past, if they have Mother Witch, that is going to go directly there, and then you're going to have to overspend.
And the high Valk with the mortar to pull as well. So a lot of expenditure there against that one Ram Rider, 8 versus 5. And as you can see, Mo starting to build up a bit of an elixir lead.
Yeah, he sure is. And now on this right-hand side, that Musketeer is basically dealt with there. I'm not going to... okay, it does not cross the bridge. A little bit unfortunate. So one of the Zappies does get taken out before. I thought it was going to go right in front of that cannon cart. And this is very smart out of Bruzani here. He decides that he's going to go Spear Goblins on the right to support the Valk because he saw the Mother Witch played on the left. So if you are getting that window of opportunity, go ahead and use them. Now this Musketeer will deal with everything pretty easily, but this is what the elixir lead you were talking about.
Mortar in to hold on to the Ram Rider, and it feels like Bruzani has no real option of how to deal with that Mother Witch. She's almost untouchable on the other side of the board.
Yeah, he really doesn't. At the end of the day, he knows that the value of that Mother Witch is going to come on Mo's own side of the field. Once it crosses, Mo doesn't really care what happens to the Mother Witch because he already has the value. He still has the lead here, but I also think one of the most underrated cards in this matchup is that Ghost. A lot of Mo's damage has been that Ghost sneaking through and forcing something out of him on the other lane. I think he needs to keep taking advantage of the Ghost if he's going to make it work, but Look, to be honest, I'm very impressed with Bruzani here and the way that he's just staying composed. He's down 0-1, has had some tough matches here and some tough interactions as well, and he still has the lead. It seems like he's unfazed.
Gonna let that Ghost go ahead, touch tower, but getting ready for a counter push to the opposite direction. That is quite a lot of damage, maybe more than anticipated by the American, but here we go. Final minute triple elixir. It is the lead right now for Bruzani, 969 to 1030 as he levels down with those pigs on the right-hand side.
Yeah, I'm surprised Mo didn't. Obviously, it would be a little bit of an overcommit, but I would have maybe liked to see some arrows there. That Ram Rider's going to connect.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that earthquake. Now I ate my words there because I said I wanted to see some arrows on defense just to avoid any chip damage from those hoggies, but then he wouldn't have had enough for the EQ, and that EQ was the reason it connected. Maybe he does go arrows here. That is a beautiful play out of him, and I'm really impressed by the gameplay of Bruzani, but I think this is just going to be an EQ arrow cycle, and it's going to be GG.
Ram Rider in, final 10 seconds, mortar high. Bruzani needs to put something down on the right-hand side, can't quite do it. Gonna go ahead and fall to the EQ and arrows, as my counterpart here said, and that's a GG, well played. Welcome to the big leagues, Bruzani.
Yeah, I mean, the positive thing I can tell you, Roseni, is people have had worse starts to their CRL careers and they still have fantastic careers nowadays. Not everyone's going to debut the way Lapo and Igor did, right? You still have more matches to play and you still could make a big name out of yourself even in your first month if you make that run through losers. So keep your head up. It is Mo Light. It's no easy opponent.
And here's that Royal Ghost you talked about, just absolutely escapes on that left-hand side. And look at all the swings getting in, tons of damage, gets a 3 full swings, and that right there enough to secure the victory early for Mo Light.
Yeah, it was very smart play overall from Mo. He kept that Mother Witch always on his side, which did not allow those Spear Goblins to get any value. And as soon as he would see the Musketeer, the Valk, and the Cannon card on one side, he would go ahead and Ghost on the other, knowing that the only thing that he had was those Spear Goblins that don't really defend well against the Ghost, and the Ghost would have to get onto tower. So it was just heads up play, knowing what your opponent has in hand. And I mean, nothing new from Mo.
Yeah, big connection for the Ram Rider as well on that left-hand side. And that seemed like the absolute nail in the coffin. Up to that point, a slight lead there. You wonder if that one-shot Ram Rider goes down, if maybe we have a different result when we come to the end.
Yeah, we definitely would have a different result, but it all comes down to knowing the exact elixir. He knew that if he could not arrows there on the right, he would take some damage, but it doesn't matter because the damage that he would do onto the left-hand side tower would be so much that at the end of the day, he can just cycle EQ. It's knowing your own deck, knowing elixir. This is why he is so good. He has deck cycle, elixir, he analyzes real time, and everything put together makes him the best player in the world.
Well, let's go ahead and take a look at the advancement that best player has made in our bracket. Remember, it's double elimination, so the young American not out. Yeah. He is down, though. Mohamed Light will move on to face the winner of Surge TS and Dark Angel, our match of the day. We'll see you later today. Bruzani now down in the lower bracket, the elimination bracket, where he will be fighting for his tournament life here. But a clean 2-0 for Mo, and every one of those wins in the upper bracket saves you a whole lot of journey towards that monthly championship.
It sure does, and this Dark Angel versus Surge TS match is so important for both of these players. I think it is the most important match of the day. Both of them need these points. Like you said early on, you don't want to fall out of that top 24. Dark Angel is currently out of that top 24, but just around the 30-33 mark, and I think Surge TS is just on the inside. So not only are you competing against each other in this match, you're competing against each other directly for that top 24 in very, very close standings. There is a lot on the line here.
A lot on the line indeed, and you see that 620 leaderboard points right now for Surge TS, and that kind of shows you the gap right there, because Dark Angel is still in the running for making those qualifiers, but you see the difference between 397 and 620, the how heavily weighted it is near the top.
Yeah, it sure is, and I think the big plus side that Surge TS has over Dark Angel and why you see those that point differential there is ladder. a lot of these players do make a lot of their points on ladder. Dark Angel is not one of those players that finishes too high up on ladder. He did have 1 or 2 this whole year, but Surge TS, if you watch end of season streams, he is consistently fighting for that top spot, that top 100, top 50, and at the end of the day, all those points add up, and that's why I think Dark Angel really, this is his last shot to get into that top 24. I expect to see him no matter what in that last chance qualifier if he does lose, but you don't want to go through there.
Well, let's go ahead and see what you think watching at home. Will it be Surge TS out of Brazil, the longtime both ladder player and, of course, very, very solid competitive player as well? Or will it be the man who came up through Arena Casito, at one point a Team Queso player in Dark Angel? So we'll be doing votes there. I think we're getting the hashtags up here on the screen in just a moment. But while we're talking about it, do you have any predictions for yourself on this game, Eric?
I'm going Dark Angel 2-1. And I think they're both very experienced players, so I don't think any of them are nervous. I just have one little edge over to Dark Angel, and that is that he works with Lauta, who is an Argentinian player who is also very well known for his analysis, right? I give a lot of praise to someone like Julesy. Lauta is, in my opinion, one of the best player analysts in the game, and he's working with Dark. The only thing I would say, Dark, I know last time around you had fun with your decks, the giants and the witches and all this. Let's stick a little more safe this time. I like the analysis, but let's not go crazy right now.
And I'm going to go ahead and pick the other side of that there, Eric. I'm going to go with Surge TS, very experienced, very composed, has been here tons of times before, but most importantly, you see that difference there. Surge TS knows he's in the running for one of those top 24 spots. I think he's going to be dialed in a bit more here, and I expect to see Surge TS take this one. Might also be a 3-game series, so we'll see. Let's go ahead and see what you guys voted here in just a moment. We'll get the results, and looks like the crowd is with me on this one. Almost 70% of respondents saying Surge TS the winner today, but, you know, 70-30, not bad odds here in Clash Royale.
No, not at all, especially, you know, with drill available. 70-30 is looking real good right now. But yeah, I mean, I think Surge TS, to the public, I would also vote for him. I have a little bit of that bias from working with Lauta before and the inside information, right, that I've been able to work with him, so I have a little bit of praise for the analysis. But wall breakers is not something we see very often.
Yeah, certainly not very. I mean, considering how dominant and how popular it was for so long, seeing wall breakers right now may be a bit of a surprise here, as you're responding that same way. Although wall breakers with 2 drill counters may be less of a surprise.
Yeah, and Morden didn't make it, but his wall breakers did make it here, and Infernal Tower wall breakers, Valk and King Tower activated as well there. Just an odd start right now. I was not expecting something like this. Obviously, you do expect to see Tesla every time you see that drill deck. The Infernal Tower is going to work out very nicely for him in this matchup. And just as I'm praising Dark Angel for his analysis work with Lauta, it doesn't get much better than having an Infernal Tower and not going up against RG Lightning.
Yeah, that's absolutely massive. So, you know, we've seen this drill wall breakers deck before, usually played with Tesla, as you commented. Inferno Tower, maybe a bit of a snipe here to Surge TS.
It definitely does seem like a snipe here. It seems like he was expecting this exact deck, right? He doesn't have a lot of good counters against that drill. That Firecracker is not going to do all that much. Are you going to have to Earthquake log on defense? The Electro Spirit doesn't take care of that either. And let's just see if he has delivery, and he does. This was very well played here from Surge TS.
So first 2 minutes away, double elixir about to start flowing, and at the moment, Surge TS in not a huge lead, but a good spot, you'd have to imagine, from deck choices, and we should see Inferno Tower come out here. No, decides to go ahead and pressure instead, and maybe just go for a trade.
Yeah, that is a risky play, though. Obviously, the Infernal Tower is not going to be onto that RG quick enough, so there's a lot of damage there. And I really don't like that play, because look at the cycle up top. Yes, you have a quick cycle, but we know what Earthquake log cycle decks can do to you late in the game. So giving up all that damage on a deck that really wasn't going to get any damage on you is very risky, in my opinion.
Final 25 seconds on its way. Dark Angel sets up with the Royal Giant in the back. Elite Barbarians for a minute were seeming like they were dominating the meta, and then kind of fell out of favor after a little bit of a while. But RG E-Barbs together, it does feel like 2018.
It sure does. It feels like 2018 and also a little bit of 3 months ago, like you said. But here we go. Earthquake does cycle on through, and that might not seem like much, but that Electro Spirit hitting as well does give him an extra hit there out of the RG. And even though this was a beautiful matchup early on, you know what happens with cycle decks when you make one mistake. That is all you need. One mistake will lose you the game, and at this point, log Earthquake cycle. As long as he doesn't take too much damage, he'll be able to win this one.
It'd be very interesting to see how Dark Angel, or how Surge TS tries to get damage on tower right now besides that drill. You see the EQ cycle left-hand side. Plenty of elixir right now for Dark.
Yeah, he actually cycles faster than Surge TS if he just needs to get back to Tesla or a log, right? So the damage is going to be a huge problem. It's just going to be Skelly's Electro Spirit, Firecracker over and over and over again. And I actually do like this RG play because you're going to stop the offense for a little bit. You need to put down that Inferno. You cannot go full offense, and look how much elixir he spent. Delivery, Skelly's, Inferno, all there, buys you a little bit more time. Here we go with Earthquake. Just a very smart play out of Dark there.
Log Skellies take care of business, 252 to 994. Dark Angel can certainly see the finish line here in game number one, not too far off. Fireball tries to make room enough for those wall breakers. Can one connect? No, the log does save the day here, but it's now Surge TS trying to put as much pressure on. Not going to beat that EQ. GG, well played. Dark Angel taking game number one.
Yeah, and Dark Angel showing no emotion from someone that usually does show a lot of emotion, right? He's always been, you lived it, I lived it live in CRL. He's always jumping around, screaming. So you see how dialed in he is, that he just beat a matchup that really, if Surge TS played that very defensively, probably should not have won at all. And no emotion out of him. He is not worried about winning one match. He's worried about winning it all this weekend, and I really like that.
Well, you gotta wonder how much changing the, I mean, I'm sure that means he has Tesla, obviously, for something else, but how much changing Tesla and that one elixir difference in terms of cycle changes things, right? Both with that, in terms of the placement against the EQ, lots of changes in this matchup here with that one shifting card.
Yeah, there are obviously a lot of changes, but with this specific matchup, you actually want the Inferno Tower, in my opinion. Obviously, Lucas, Sam, if you're watching this, feel free to tweet me that I'm wrong. But with no reset there, I would definitely believe that the Inferno Tower is better. It just all came down to that one play where he saw RG, and it's okay to wall breakers. I don't mind the wall breakers play at all, because then you still have enough elixir for that Inferno Tower. But he went on a full push on that right-hand side that left him dry on elixir and just too much damage. And then he even defended after that with the Inferno Tower that didn't get onto the RG. So just a little bit of bad interactions, and that's all it takes in Clash.
That's all it takes indeed. So Fireball out for Surge TS in game number one. Drill out for Surge TS in game number one. Of course, we've not seen Drill yet out of Dark Angel on the other side with that Royal Giant deck. Royal Giant, E-Barbs, you know, there's a few cards there you're not totally worried about burning. It does feel like right now there's a lot of really excellent flexibility for Dark Angel that you don't have on the sides of Surge TS for his next two decks.
Absolutely. And I am curious to see if you do play a Drill deck, what are you going to do it with, right? Because there is no Tesla out of him. He just used Tesla, and to me, Drill decks, the best combination is always with Tesla. It has been proven not only by players in CRL, but by statistics in Royale API and everywhere, right? It always shows that Tesla Drill deck, and not only will Dark Angel not have that, Surge TS just used his Drill as well with no Tesla. So what is the plan here out of both of these players?
Very curious, right? I mean, you do have Hog EQ still available on Surge TS's side, and as someone who's known as a decent cycle player overall, Surge TS might go that direction. On the other side of it, though, for Dark Angel, right, the burning of the Tesla does take out both the most popular Drill decks and the most popular Hog decks. So you got to wonder what he's going for here in game number two.
Yeah, I think we might actually get a weird deck here in game number two. I don't mind it just because you're up 1-0, and if you can go ahead and snipe something, you obviously did narrow down a lot of the options that Surge TS has, because all those cards that he just used are all very important cards other than the wall breakers. He has no delivery, he has no Valk, he has no Tesla, no Drill either. So you can narrow down a lot of what he is going to use. I do want to point out that Surge TS is a really good Loon player, and even though we haven't seen Loon a lot, he might be able to get a Loon play in here with no Tesla available on Dark Angel's side.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen, other than when Ruben plays, haven't seen much in the way of Loon here in these competitions. I mean, what do you think about Lava in this situation? Either just straight up Lava Miner or Lava Loon here for Dark Angel?
I don't mind it at all. Obviously, Inferno Tower is that big no-no when you play Lava. You do not want to see that. So to guarantee yourself that not being there is a great play. You do still have to be worried about Inferno Dragon and Tesla. Tesla does cycle very well against the Lava decks, but they usually get overwhelmed. So you just want to have a reset available for those Inferno Dragons, whether it is Zap, Snowball, something along those lines if you're going to play it. Other than that, you don't really have to worry about much else.
So enough prognostication. Here we go into game number 2. Advantage right now for the Spaniard. Dark Angel up 1 after that bit of a slip there by Surge TS in the midway of last game.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not going to be easy to recover after that. I'm sure Surge TS saw that match and he was excited, right? He had control up until then. So the only thing I can say here is Surge TS is about as experienced as they come. He has played every single CRL. He has been in the Worlds, right? He's been for Brazil, a very key player as well. So the positive is he should be able to recover from that. But Dark Angel, I have never seen him this dialed in, and I'm a close friend of his. I can tell you, I have never seen this side of Dark.
Mother Witch in for Dark Angel. No, he's not up against Fireball this game, so nice pick there. Easy King Tower activation for Dark Angel. Talk about him being dialed in here. You know, we definitely have seen him grow up a bit in Clash Royale from his debut in CRL back in 2019, but he was certainly fairly young. And you know, you say you're close with him. Talk about the maturity growth here for Dark Angel over time.
Absolutely, man. And it was for him, I think early on in CRL, we all saw it, right? He showed up to Los Angeles. He was just a kid happy to be there. Didn't matter what was going on. He was talking to this team, screaming here, screaming there, jumping around. Now it seems like, all right, I got that out of my system. I had a lot of fun. I still have fun, but this is showtime. I am going to win. The fun is over. I'll have the fun when I have the points and when I can make World Finals. And he was on the Queso team that didn't make World Finals, so he still has that hunger to make it over to that Worlds because he saw his old teammates win it, right? And I think that fuels someone that is as competitive as him.
We'll talk about competitive right now. Surge TS quite competitive in this matchup.
Yeah.
And so far shutting down the Electro Giant in the opening few minutes.
That flying machine is getting so much value, and again has a little bit of the same mistake. Every time he's NATOing, he's only able to get one Hoggy onto that King Tower. You want to try and get 2 there, and that is where a lot of the damage has been coming in. Also, when you do play E-Giant, the 3 things you don't want to match up against, in my opinion, are Cage. You don't want to match up against Zappies and those recruits either, because half of them are going to go to the other side, and it will not allow you to full push, and it's always going to give chip damage. So just a lot of pressure there, but this Mini P.E.K.K.A is going to do work here.
Mini P.E.K.K.A trying to take the Brawler off the board. Mini P.E.K.K.A does not get on tower though. And man, Surge TS just shutting down these lanes. 356 on the right-hand side. Feels like a matter of time. And you gotta imagine that he's gonna maybe poison on the, no, not on the Mother Witch here. But you do feel like at some point he does that.
Yeah, there's the poison there, but I think regardless, there's just too much troops onto that E-Giant. The Zappies slow it down just a little bit too much. Even with the Goblin Cage, in my opinion, not being placed in the correct spot there, you want to obviously kite that a little bit more just to buy you some extra time. Even then, it doesn't get any damage on the board. And Surge TS is on point with matchups right now. I genuinely thought this was going to go the other way when it came to matchups, and I would give the slight edge to Surge TS on gameplay, but it's been the opposite so far in the first 2 matches. And I think this is where Lauta, you need to help Dark, because Dark has not been playing bad at all. He has been playing smart Clash Royale. He's been doing what he has to, but matchups need to accompany you.
And you talk about these tornadoes. Sure, King Tower activation helps, but it's against Royal Hogs, so it doesn't help as much. And yeah, as you said, you only get 1 of those on that tower. That's definitely worse than 2.
Yeah, it definitely is, and it's worse than 3 also. But it's a tough matchup. I genuinely don't think he was going to win this at any point. If he got 2-3 Hoggies onto that King Tower, it doesn't really matter. He was pretty much doomed from the start of that one, as long as Surge TS made no mistakes, and he made 0 mistakes.
And you see the story right there. Most of those numbers pretty similar except for tower damage. Dark Angel unable to get to the second level and actually touch tower in any meaningful way. So Surge TS shuts it down nicely. I like to see the dial in from Surge TS after, you might see some frustration after that game number 1, maybe overcommitting here. Nothing of the sort in this case for Surge TS, and now we are tied 1-1 going into our third and final.
Experience. That is what you get from playing CRL after CRL after CRL. You're not worried about a single game loss. You know how many times you've come back. You know how many reverse sweeps you've had in King of the Hill, in 1v1 sets, in 2v2. And at the end of the day, that your brain captures that, right? You're more and more used to being under that pressure, and you could see it there. Experience is such a factor in CRL.
Here we go. Game number 3. Will the experience outdo the youth? We'll see. Dark Angel goes with Spear Goblins up at the bridge, immediately countered by the Electro Wizards. So the calls I was going to make on decks already out the window on both sides.
Hey, you already got one right. All right, we have to stick to the positives of today and not the negatives. You got one spot on earlier. You mentioned the Mother Witch, you mentioned the Ram Rider. Both were played, so let's just go ahead and stick with that more than the mistakes,
Fair enough. Ewiz out for Surge TS. We've seen him play Fireball and Poison so far. I was thinking it might be Hoggy Q in game number 3, but wondering if maybe Surge TS is going to be going Royal Giant?
It could definitely be Royal Giant. And all right, so there are positives on both sides starting off right now. Obviously, you always want to have Fireball when you're going up against Mother Witch, and that Fisherman should almost cement it as RG. Every time you see Ewiz Fisherman, it most likely is going to be RG. But on the other side, he has to be very careful. Okay. All right. So it is not RG, but this is going to be odd because he does not have Poison or Fireball like you mentioned, and those are the two best spells when you're playing a heavy deck, a heavy Mega Knight deck of this sort. He does have to be careful now of those Spear Goblins not to give up. He should have arrows. Yeah, that's he missed one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, misses one of the Spear Goblins. Still okay damage, but gonna now have to respond to that Spear Goblin as well. Mother Witch will turn both these into piggies, so oh no, just one of them, unfortunately, there for Surge TS. As we go through the first 2 minutes of game time, right now the Brazilian is in the lead as Dark Angel creates counter push.
Yeah, I'm so impressed by Surge TS here. He read this perfectly in the sense that usually, like I said, you don't want to play this type of deck without having a Poison, without having Fireball, just so that you could deal with everything a lot easier. But he was so smart in realizing what cards he has left, right? We've seen the evolution of this duels format where he was okay with just having arrows because he knows that defense is going to consist of the Bomber, Spear Goblins, and not much else. So very, very smart deck choices out of him, and it seems like he's adapted to this format a lot better than a lot of other players, so I'm very pleasantly surprised.
Arrows in on that left-hand side. Didn't it, it's one of those things you didn't expect, or when do you expect to see Graveyard versus Graveyard, which was so much a Clash Royale for so long, and Graveyard's been kind of dead for a while, mostly due to that Mother Witch. And right now, though, we're seeing GY on both sides, Mother Witch taken care of. And so far, Mother Witch not creating the dominance that Surge TS would hope for in this matchup.
Yeah, that was bad placement overall on that defense. I think from all three troops, right? If you're already going to play that Mother Witch up high, just to not give extra Fireball damage to that Ewiz, you might as well play it so high that he can't get the Fireball onto Mother Witch and Tower. I think a little bit of a mistake there. Then the Dark Prince came up way too high. The Spear Goblins got a lot of damage as well. And this is it. Arrows, Fireball, whatever you want to do, you can go ahead and do. It is spell damage. So I guess I was right on my prediction. You were right on deck choices. I was right on the prediction.
There we go. Graveyard in. And not going to do quite that much with the Mega Knight not tanking. And you see Surge TS with the celebration there. There's the emotion you wanted, the fist pump from Dark Angel with the celebration. GG, well played. Fireball finishes it off. Yeah,
and you can tell that this means a lot to Dark Angel. He does not want to be fighting for the ladder placements at the end. This last ladder season is going to be stressful for a lot of players, and if you can go ahead and secure yourself some extra points being here, that is definitely what you want to do, especially if you're not a player that specializes in ladder. We have so many of those, right? You don't want to put yourself in a position where you have to beat Anaban, Pompeo, Igor, Lapo, all these players, Basoto, Lucas. you want to be able to secure some of these, and he just did.
Dark Angel coming in today, 33rd on the overall rankings, 54 points behind Cody Go, who's currently holding on to that number 24 spot for World Finals. This is a nice step forward here for Dark Angel with the 2-1 win over Surge TS.
That is huge. And it's funny because we saw the points earlier, right? And Surge TS is a little bit higher up, but it seems like there are packs where you're trying to just overstep each little pack. And 54 points, it might seem like a lot, but it's really not. If you're Gold Eagle and you didn't make it here to this top 8, you're stressing seeing players like Dark Angel get wins on the board, because one more win and he is really close up to you.
Let's go take a look at the bracket here and see how things fall out after those wins and losses. Double elimination, of course, meaning that Dark Angel will move on to face Mohamed Light in our next matchup. And Bruzani and Surge TS will face off in an elimination match on the lower bracket. So Surge TS going to give the young rookie one more big test. We'll see if he can pass it, or if he gets a rude awakening, a rude welcome here in the Clash Royale League overall. But that Mo Light Dark Angel matchup, Mo's playing pretty well, but Dark Angel looks totally dialed in.
The one thing I would say, I love the way that Dark Angel played, but you will not get away with those matchups against Mo Light. The matchups are probably going to be tougher to start off because Julesy is there as well. And Mo just doesn't make mistakes on defense. We have seen him over and over again be 100% perfect on everything he does on that defensive end. So if you're Dark, I think it's time to take some risks in that upper bracket. You need to try something special, try to get a snipe in. I don't know what you're gonna do, but just going head to head and not getting a favorable matchup against Mo, not gonna work.
Well, we'll see if we can figure out that matchup magic in the future. But for now, we still have some of our first round matchups coming up. And coming up next, we have a battle of countrymen, and where it's Sandbox, who has been absolutely lights out as of late, been really, really phenomenal, up against Coco, a very talented log bait player, 8.3K on ladder, and going to try to take a big win over Sandbox. And very quietly, despite having not made monthly finals before, Coco is ahead on the leaderboard.
Yeah, I'm actually shocked here with these leaderboard points. I would have never been able to predict that. I had no idea, to be honest. And Sandbox does seem like coming into this, he might not be the underdog, but I don't think he's that far ahead either. A name, yeah, everyone knows Sandbox, but the gameplay I saw at Coco this past weekend was so impressive.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that I think we need to double check those points on Coco, because I believe he's around the 200 to 300s in his leaderboard points. I don't think he's above Sandbox at the moment, but maybe we'll get the booth to go ahead and check those numbers one more time. Sandbox, Coco's certainly talented. To break 8,000, you have to be, but Sandbox has been on another level as of late. He's been good for a long time, obviously, but it feels like he's really coming into his own in these last few months.
And I think it does have a little bit to do with, I see him letting loose more, enjoying the game more. You see him on Twitter being active with the Spanish community, throwing jabs here and there. And I think the enjoyment of the game allows you to play a lot better. And once he let loose, you saw his game just get better and better and better. He's competing, when he goes into that top 1, he tweets at his teammate Anaban from Tribe, and he goes, look, I'm top 1 now. And all of that banter just makes you better, not better technically, but motivationally when your teammates are that good, and it's showing.
Well, you can see when someone, you use the word loose, right? You see when someone is comfortable, when they're calm, when they're able to joke and have fun and be a bit more relaxed, not so tense every single thing they do. Well, that reduces your stress, reduces your mistakes, keeps you dialed in nicely. So yeah, it's been good stuff for Sandbox as of late, both within CRL and in outside competitions as well. Very curious to see how his countryman faces off against him as we go into this one. It's going to be Coco top of your screen and Sandbox at the bottom. And as I'm looking at it right now, I believe that Coco comes into this competition with 282 points, putting him at 83rd on the current rankings.
I'm sure he's not going to complain if it stays at 600 though. So that was Rich that called you out on that, Coco. It was not me. Do not remove me friend of season, please. I still need to watch your games. But I am going to tell you, from this past weekend, what I saw to Coco, I was so impressed, man. I love what I saw at Sandbox, but if we're just going off this past weekend, I'm actually might predict Coco here.
And talking about predictions, Coco going Graveyard game 1. What an interesting choice here out of the man making his debut in CRL.
Definitely a risk, and so far not what you want to see when you're playing Graveyard. You have that Infernal Dragon over for the Valk, you have it for the Baby Dragon as well, and then the best defense against Graveyard other than Poison, you have the archers, right? It is not what you wanted to see if you're gonna run this type of Graveyard deck. You have no reset other than that Ice Spirit, and I'm pretty sure moving forward, Sandbox being the player that he is, he's not gonna let that Ice Spirit continuously connect onto his Infernal Dragon, so it's gonna get very, very tough for him to actually break through. He's gonna have to overspend on offense on the bridge just to take care of that Infernal Dragon. He's gonna have to overspend as well to take care of those archers.
Speaking of those leaderboards, you did see Sandbox's number, 600 points. That does put him in 6th place overall in 2021 on the CRL point leaderboard. So most likely, I believe, and we'll be getting numbers on this in the next few weeks, I believe, Sandbox has clinched his spot in World Finals. But of course, a little bit of Clash Royale left to be played here. Graveyard in on the left-hand side from Coco, and not going to get a ton here as the Cannon card does play defense.
I feel like everyone just switched out their coach for RF this weekend because it's Graveyard, 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 Graveyard in a meta where we haven't really seen any Graveyard. Last game you were saying how unusual it is to see a Graveyard versus Graveyard matchup, and we come into game number 1 here and we get that again.
You do see Fireball on the side of Coco. I've not seen the big spell yet on the side of Sandbox here.
I'm not too sure what he's going to be rolling with. Usually Delivery does not have another big spell. They could be running arrows. I don't really know what this deck will run because you don't want to waste the Fireball and Delivery both in one deck in a duels format. It is a very risky thing to do, especially knowing that Mother Witch hasn't been played yet. You're spending a lot of those things that are good for that defense, and that opens up a lot of game here for Coco if it does end up being that.
Sandbox up as we go into sudden death overtime, 1874 to 1472. A lot across the board, and this time a tank does get into Princess Tower range, and the Princess Tower stays on the Valkyrie for a little while.
Yeah, the archers actually stayed alive there. None of the skellies were hitting them once that Natal was called in there. Unfortunate, obviously, if those archers would have gone down, he would have got a lot more damage, but this is a nice counter push out of him. Those skellies on the right, a little bit of good RNG, and they all ooh, he actually got it done.
Wow, you see the slightly high play on the Graveyard opened up the door there, and King Tower activated. So we'll see if that does play a role in the final 60 seconds of gameplay.
That is one of the hardest things to activate with you. It's not that much the fact that you have to time it perfectly. Everything has to work out in your favor, because once that Natal does start pulling, you need the Skelly to actually pop up as it's pulling. If the Skelly is already out there, then Natal will end up taking it down. So everything had to go perfect for him, and that King Tower activation is so impressive, and to even try it at this point is already a very high risk.
Final 35 seconds. We'll see if that King Tower activation is impactful at all. Loading up at the bridge right now is Coco. Graveyarding on the left-hand side here for Sandbox. Graveyards in both directions. The NATO tries to pull back and get the Baby Dragon into tower range. Doesn't quite happen, but things are a little bit closer. Can he stop? Does not stop the cannon cart, and that's GG.
Yeah, it is GG, and to me, MVP of this game is that Infernal Dragon. It would get insane amounts of value over and over again. Every single push on the bridge would just get stopped. There was no answer to it. You could not do anything about it. You need the Fireball for those archers and the cannon cart onto the Graveyard on offense. So if you did use it on the Infernal Dragon, the archers just get insane value and they will never go down. So just, I mean, that Infernal Dragon MVP, I don't know whose call it was to run this specific Graveyard deck, if they were expecting Graveyard out of Coco, but a beautiful call.
Beautiful call indeed. And there were a couple moments here where I felt like Coco might have a shot, but you mentioned those archers, and Fireball's going to be a -1 trade on those every single time. King Tower Activation does come through, but you gotta wonder if that's, at that point, more style points than anything else.
I think it was a little bit more style points, but I like style points. As a caster, I like it, man. Thank you for the nice interaction there. I have tried that so many times, and I probably got it to work once out of 50, so to do it in CRL is still impressive, be the situation that it be.
So big win here for Sandbox in game number 1. Does have the advantage as we go over into game number 2. And very curious to see what the young rookie Coco does to try to make some changes here against a guy who's vying for a top 5 spot right now on our leaderboards.
If I'm Sandbox, I'm going comfort right now. There is no pressure on me. Coco has all the pressure on himself. He is a rookie, but he does have enough points where there is pressure, right? Because on Bruzani's side earlier on, there was no real pressure. You're not fighting to get into that. I think it's a little bit too late, but Coco does have a chance. So there is pressure there. Let the pressure build up on that side. Don't focus too much on Coco. Do what you like to do with decks. Play your comfort. Maybe throw out a drill deck if you're comfortable with drill. I'm not too sure how comfortable Sandbox is, but it always seems like a safe bet in my opinion.
Fireball played on both sides. Dark Prince played by Sandbox. Valk played by Coco. So we'll see if either of them do go the drill direction. EQ to cycle to open up here for Coco.
Yeah, that's not bad for Sandbox in the sense that you see that EQ and you have a full cage there ready to go, and that is even better. Seeing EQ and having a flying machine is one of the best things that you can see in Clash. If you are the player with the flying machine, you know that you can get infinite value out of that played on your side. That delivery does do good damage, but that delivery can only be played on his side. So every time you're on defense, you get a free flying machine. You can play it in the middle. It takes care of both sides, and right now Sandbox has to be feeling really good.
First minute away, and you talk about feeling good. Sandbox way in the lead here, and the Bomber gets a little bit extra chip there onto some of those Royal Hogs, but Sandbox misses the pull on 2, and that's a nice chunk of damage for Coco as we go into the midway point of regulation time.
Yeah, that definitely will bring him back into the game. It is a very odd mistake out of someone as good as Sandbox. He was low on elixir, so it was a last minute cage, to be fair to him, but I think at that point just stick it right in front of your tower. Don't take any risks. But this is the big problem here for Coco. What are you going to do against these flying machines? What do you have other than those spear goblins? And that musketeer is going to be played in the back, but the problem is defending with that flying machine. Look at the value it gets. Not only did it fully defend the cannon card, but now it's on tower as well.
Defended, took out spear goblins, and got on tower, all for one chunk of 4 elixir. Pretty huge result there for Sandbox as we go into double elixir time, building his lead back up again, 13-28 on that left-hand side.
And both of these players having the same thought when it comes to archetypes both times, but it just seems like Sandbox had the better idea, the better plan on which type of Hoggies deck, which type of graveyard deck he wants to run, because when it comes to matchup, this is 100% in his favor. Obviously it's not in 100-0, but I'd rather have a cage than a mortar, because that goblin is going to pop up and help me with those Hoggies as well, not just going to go down like the mortar. Yes, the mortar is a little bit more offensive, but look at the defense here. It is perfect every single time out of Sandbox.
And no more significant damage here. Little hog touch on the left-hand side, make 1173. So a little chipping away here on both sides between Coco and Sandbox.
This is rough, man. Recruits are back in cycle as well. There they are. The recruits come in, and you only have Earthquake. So Earthquake's going to take care of that right-hand side, but you still have the flying machine, and now you have that whole left-hand side to deal with. A beautiful delivery there, but that means that no damage in for the Hoggies, and now he has enough for Earthquake if a mortar comes down. You'll probably see an Earthquake here as well. Decides, I don't even need it, and that is actually a defensive Earthquake.
Wow, to maybe to slow down the Hogs and do a little bit of damage. Interesting choice here from Coco. You don't see a ton of, you see mostly defensive Earthquakes against Graveyard, if anything, but they're a creative use of it.
I'm a little bit colorblind, I'm not gonna lie, so I did double take just to make sure I wasn't making a fool out of myself, but I was very shocked to see that defensive Earthquake, especially because he was down on elixir, right? I do understand you have to mitigate the damage with only 600 left on your own tower, and that mortar connection on the left doesn't really mean anything to Sandbox. He doesn't mind. You can connect that all you want. and Zappies and Cage here, just beautiful defense over and over again out of Sandbox. And I guess that's, I know I say this a lot, but to me, the best players are not the ones with the best offense. They're the ones with the best defense when it comes to Clash Royale. And yeah, Sandbox and Mo put on a show when it comes to defense so far.
Arrows in on that, and this is going to be pretty much the end here. 173 left-hand side. Won't take much when you have both Arrows and Poison to finish that one off. Just one more solid defense from Sandbox, and he will sew up this first round match against Coco. Welcome to the big leagues, another rookie.
Yeah, welcome to the big leagues is right. We can't see that. It says Tribe Gaming. He did put a translation for us. Both of them did give out shout outs there. I like it, man. If you're already gonna have the cam, give out a shout out to your org, the people that support you. I really like that. So, and it seems like Coco was a good sport. Even though he did lose, he still threw up his shout out there. Didn't seem too upset about it, and I don't think he should. You still have a long road ahead of you this weekend.
Yeah, you're down but not out. That lower bracket certainly one you can play through, and just early on you talked about it, and this was that flying machine, and over again that flying machine creating fits for Coco.
It's just the fact that it's not that he didn't defend it well. It's you literally have no defense against it. Look how many times it cleaned up the spear goblins. It would get damage onto the musketeers, sometimes would even get onto tower as well. And then the recruits, if you look at that as well, yes, it defends perfectly on one side, and then it creates a counter on the actual side where he needed the damage, right? The biggest problem here for Coco was that they were going to opposite towers, so he would be able to defend the recruits onto the troops of Coco, and then he would actually get the counter on the side that he wanted to. So it was just all about the split lanes, and the pushes are just too difficult to defend, to be honest.
Great work here for Sandbox, and I would love to see, you know, not rooting for anyone specific in our competition, but Sandbox we'll see on the bracket in a minute, taking one step forward. Would love to see Mo versus Sandbox at some point throughout this weekend. That's a great matchup. Yeah. And as we do take a look at the deck breakdown here, and this is the craziness of this weekend. Graveyard versus Graveyard, the second time we've seen it on this weekend.
I can't believe it, and this is a little bit of what I touched on earlier. They both had the same idea when it comes to archetypes, but you're going to see it in deck 1 as well as in deck 2. The answers for Sandbox were always there, while on the other side, Coco had no answers, right? Inferno Dragon, where is the reset? Other than that Ice Spirit, there is absolutely nothing. And here, where can you stop that flying machine? What do you have against those recruits? The mortar is great, but the cage is better, right? The Goblin Cage is better than the mortar in this matchup. The fly machine is better than the musketeer. Everything just worked out better in Sandbox's favor. I like the fact that Coco had the right mindset with the archetypes, but just the better choices coming out of Tribe. And obviously it does help when you have a coach, an analyst, and a full organization behind you when it comes to matchups, right?
Yeah, that might not hurt to have the power of Chief Pat and the whole Austin crew behind you. So let's go ahead and take a look at the bracket and see what that's done here for Sandbox as he moves forward in our bracket. He'll await the victor of Famous Kid and Vitor in a few moments here. And of course, the winner of that will face the winner of Molite and Dark Angel. So a nice step forward. And this puts all three of those players need to just win twice to make that championship. On the bottom side, Coco now drops into the elimination bracket where he will face either Famous Kid or Vitor. So either way, going to be a very challenging out there for Coco.
It sure is. And I think if I'm Coco, I actually prefer to face Famous Kid, just because we're both ladder players, and you have seen a lot more out of Famous Kid than you have out of Vitor at that top ladder, right? So if you are a rookie, you do need the points. I'd rather play someone I already know. I know his play style. I've played a million times on ladder. So as Coco, I'm a Vitor fan right now. And if I'm anyone else, then I just want to watch beautiful Clash Royale.
Well, guess what? You get to just watch some beautiful Clash Royale, Eric, because that's it for you on the day. Thanks so much. It's been a whole lot of fun. But now we're going to say goodbye to Eric and bring on my longtime co-host, my good friend, fresh off of filming a movie. That's right, filming a movie. Andrew Guy in the building. Andrew, really excited for this next one. We've seen these two players for a while. Famous Kid on a tear right now. Vitor, great semi-pro, turned into a full-on pro career into 2020. this should be a fun matchup between these two.
Yeah, Vitor's been playing really, really well this year, and I'm really excited to see him come out today. He talked about his favorite cards, and he mentioned 3 of them that come in a very strong deck that you love right now: Magic Archer, Goblin Drill, and Tornado. So I imagine we'll see that. And on the other side of it, Famous Kid, maybe known a little bit more for Control and Beatdown. He's talked a lot about how he loves E-Giant. Both of these guys, I feel like, are great wildcard picks to take the whole tournament this weekend, but they've got a lot of uphill battling to do after watching those first 3 matches, man. I was so shocked to see us take a break from the drill from the 2 South Koreans.
Yeah, that was a I didn't even think about that being the big shift there, but yeah, Royal Hogs on both sides, Graveyard on both sides. You know, we didn't get to see it Game 3, so who knows what we would have seen in Game 3, Goblin Drill. So here we go into our 4th matchup of the day between Famous Kid and Vitor. Famous Kid coming off of some pretty impressive performances in competitions outside of Clash Royale League, and a lot of those ones that you'll see featured in the esports tab. Vitor, of course, was a phenomenal, one of the better semi-pros in the world in 2019, and then in 2020 had a fairly nice run with Pain Gaming.
Yeah, and you know, with Famous Kid, you look at those points, 500 leaderboard points. He's been putting in the work this year, and he still has a chance to get into that last chance qualifier. So this is a really, really big weekend for him, and it's going to be all about how he decides to play with this meta. I mean, I think we were all kind of surprised, like I just said, about taking a break from the Goblin Drill, but I think the other big surprise is how much mortar we saw, how much Royal Hogs we've seen. Graveyard's been popping out a lot. I think it starts to put a question mark in your mind of what you thought maybe was going to be just kind of down the barrel when it came to analysis, and like, oh yeah, I'll see Goblin Drill, I'll see E-Giant, Mother Witch is going to pop in when Fireball's out of cycle, things like that, or excuse me, out of play. But I'm excited to see what these 2 guys want to do here. It is our 4th matchup of the day, so we're going to start giving away some money and start eliminating players pretty soon. But these guys still up at the top in that winner's bracket.
Yeah, and that winner's bracket, of course, so important because it only takes a few wins to get through that winner's bracket to the championship, whereas you drop into that lower bracket, especially in round number 1. This is the most important round. This is the round that decides whether you make that next chunk of money or not, that next chunk of points or not. This is the one that gives you that extra life, so a huge one for both of these guys. And both these guys currently in that top 54 ranking. Famous Kid currently at 17 right now, has quietly done it, but done it very well, whereas Vitor is in the 30s at the moment. So Vitor maybe a bit on the block here, kind of up and down. Famous Kid doesn't want to slide out of that top 24.
No, not at all, especially when you consider the talent that he has to go up in this winner's bracket. I mean, we saw that opening match of the day, Mohamed Light giving a big welcome to CRL to Bruzani, and then of course Sandbox, a guy that's really, really close to not even having to worry about that last chance qualifier. He played really clean Clash Royale in that last game, and again, it was nice to see a bit of a change up from him. I'm excited to see what both these guys are going to do here. And you know, I honestly, Vitor has been a lot of fun for me to watch over the last couple months. I've been checking him out at the end of the month streams or the end of the season streams, and I'm excited to see Famous Kid. You know, he's a guy I've watched a lot less, but I've heard his name for a very long time.
Famous Kid seems pretty dialed in right now. The question with Vitor is the same question we had during 2020, where you saw that Vitor, the skill was there, but the mentality wasn't. You saw him kind of beating himself up a lot when Pain Gaming was struggling, and sort of the changes going back and forth with how did they actually want to build that roster. Lucas moving from the 1v1 spot to 2v2, a lot more pressure on Vitor. So that's the big question, I think, today, is how has Vitor handled that pressure? Because even if he does get the win over Famous Kid here, and I guess we're already about 2.5, 3 minutes into the gameplay right now, if he does get the win here, the other 3 guys in the winner's circle are also dialed in right now.
I guess we're just that entertaining, Rich. You see that Bandit dashing in, going to get on top of tower. Really nice placement there, using that Fire Spirit to leapfrog the tower. I think Sir Tag wanted to coin that phrase on Twitter, and there we go. First play of the day that I get to call. We get to see a leapfrog there from the Bandit, and a bit surprised to hop in as late as we did, but you can see Famous Kid a little bit behind, but he's building a really nice push right now.
Wondered how long it would take you to get leapfrog in there, and only took about 7 seconds. So nice work, and shout out Sir Tag on that one. And you see the pressure in. Leapfrog definitely gave some value, because look at this spam just going right downhill into Vitor's tower.
Yeah, I mean, we did join late, as you said, but that was all Famous Kid for that entire minute that we just saw. It started off with that Bandit dash coming on through, and then a massive downhill push behind that Big Mama P.E.K.K.A. Ram Rider, and of course another untouched Bandit gets on top of tower. Nice stuff there. Didn't exactly see how he got to put it together, but really it all matters in those final moments when the tower falls. styles. And, you know, one thing that you did mention earlier today when you talked about Dark Angel and what you were just saying about Vitor is it's all about that mental composure. And now we're going to see how he bounces back from this overwhelming victory here at the end.
Yeah, and a really strange drill deck out of Vitor here in this first one. Furnace, E-Barbs, Drill, Flying Machine, kind of all over the place with a spawner drill choice. And not really sure what Vitor was going for in this matchup here. Famous Kid goes a bit more traditional with the P.E.K.K.A. Ram Rider and just shuts things down in game number 1.
Yeah, you know, one of the things I was thinking about coming into this weekend, Rich, was how many people were going to run something completely off meta in game 1 so they could maybe lose against the drill or at least see what their opponent came out with to better prepare themselves for games 2 and 3. I'm wondering if that's what Vitor wanted to do here by playing something that, you know, we haven't really seen much of in GCs or on ladder, and we haven't seen yet here this weekend in CRL. I'm hoping that, you know, his decks 2 and 3 will be much more on meta or at least on brand for what's been working.
Well, you know, we've talked about Vitor's nerves, and if there's one thing that takes less nerves, it's placing huts and placing drills, right? Yep. Drills, there really aren't that many placements. It's not like Miner where you have every single square plus all the fancy plays. Drill really only has 3 to 4 effective placements on offense, and then huts and furnaces, you just put them on your side, yeah. Right? I mean, there's not a whole lot of complication to those. So I'm wondering if maybe this was a choice he was going for to combat nerves and just do something simple here in game number 1. Obviously not the result he was looking for.
I love the call there, man. I think that's a pretty good call in the sense of just like, let's play something that's a little bit easier. Let's calm myself down. The problem is when you look at these spawner decks, they might work against guys like me and you or even in mid ladder, but the problem is at the highest level, it feels pretty difficult to overwhelm this good of a player by just running spawners. You know, they're not going to get too ahead of themselves. They're not going to find themselves in a massive elixir hole, and they're not going to overcommit when they see those buildings pile up. So maybe not the best deck choice in game number 1, but let's see what he has here in game number 2.
Snowball, rarely seen these days. First card here from Vitor, and very curious to see what he's going with. Snowball was at one time. Bar Barrel Snowball was the entire meta. You basically didn't even see Log and Zap for a while. And now Snowball has fallen by the wayside, but coming out here for Vitor.
Yeah, it came out for Famous Kid in game 1, now in Vitor. And maybe it's a great response to that Goblin drill. You can, you know, get those the drill off the board. The Snowball can come in late and mitigate a good amount of that damage. So maybe we'll start to see more Snowball. And of course, it's one of those spells that we don't see as much, which frees things up as you get farther through this duels format.
Mother Witch on both sides. Poison from Vitor, Fireball for Famous Kid. So might get a bit more out of the Mother Witch than Vitor would have liked, as the Bandit takes care of that Piggy with a minute 15 having been played.
Yeah, Dark Prince and Valkyrie just so incredibly popular right now. I do love the Royal Ghost sub out because it works really strong against the drill and of course creates a great amount of pressure. Even if it gets fireballed, even if it takes a few hits from the goblins, it can stay alive as we're seeing right here and create just a hair of pressure which demands that log.
Ram Rider has been thoroughly popular as of late. We've seen a bunch of her today, and here we go. Royal Giant up high, right into a P.E.K.K.A. Does the Fisherman pull that P.E.K.K.A. off in any reasonable time? And not quite.
Yeah, that's the opposite of what you want to do, is get that Fisherman too far away, gets all the damage in on the RG to take it off the board, then pulls that Mama P.E.K.K.A. in close to the tower and almost gets a big swing there. You saw Vitor wanted it.
Yeah, Vitor really wanted that one, and that, I mean, that was basically a shave. The princess is probably missing some of her hair on the left-hand side of her head at this point with how close that one came in.
Pressure in on the right side with that Royal Ghost. Doesn't get pulled from the Dark Prince, so we'll get a few swings.
And again, the Royal Giant just off in no man's land, all by his lonesome here against this Mama P.E.K.K.A. Fireball will take care of the Mother Witch, but still damage done. 17-10, not quite enough to give Famous Kid the lead over Vitor.
Yeah, Vitor now going to pile it on. Goblin Cage going to come out here. Will it be enough, though? A lot of pressure coming down.
And that P.E.K.K.A. this time does get the swing off, and the Fisherman doesn't pull the Ram Rider either. And look at that Bandit on the right-hand side. And now Vitor starting to really pressure on that right-hand lane. And that Royal Ghost does not get picked up, so the Mother Witch has to come out, and things going all wrong for Famous Kid here.
Yeah, that's 2 missed pickups by dropping a unit in the middle of the board. I talked to Eric about this a good amount. Poison's going to do the rest of the work there for Vitor. We're going to game 3, but I was talking to Eric about these plays, the defensive plays, and you see Famous Kid trying to do double duty duty with dropping those units up high. The problem is those Royal Ghosts are placed perfectly by Vitor, not getting its attention. You saw how much work that Bandit did. The dual lane pressure was phenomenal, and I think a big part of that comes from the aggressive Royal Giants at the bridge and the low Fisherman's not able to pull that P.E.K.K.A away in time.
Yeah, you see that one. If that Dark Prince goes one tile to the right, I think it pulls both the Bandit and that Royal Ghost. But Royal Ghost can be so deceptive in that Ghost form. And there you go. Again, just playing that in the outside corner. And again, the Dark Prince played one tile to the left.
Really, really tough there. You have the defense on the left-hand side. You understand what he's trying to do. He wants that Dark Prince to be able to play double duty. But at this point, when that right-hand tower is that low, just get the defense down, get it in a safe spot, get a 100% cleanup, and then worry about what you're doing on the offensive side.
So far, played on both sides. Famous Kid has played Poison, Fireball, Snowball, and Log. On Vitor's side, Arrows, Earthquake, Poison, and Snowball. So you kind of expect Vitor to run Fireball here in this game, but of course also Mother Witch already out. So maybe, depending on what Vitor goes in terms of his offensive side, I mean, we might see a Lightning here.
Yeah, we could see Lightning. We could see the return to Graveyard after we saw it in the last two sets. And with all those cards that you're talking about no longer in play, could be incredibly effective. I'd really like to see Famous Kid slow things down. I mean, we didn't get to see a lot of game number one, but that big downhill push came late in the game, whereas earlier in this game, he kept getting those aggressive Royal Giants at the bridge. And it's just not the best thing to do when you're going up against a P.E.K.K.A and you don't have the Fisherman close enough to actually defend adequately.
Yeah, it definitely felt like Famous Kid was kind of all over the place in game number two. We'll see if this calmed down Vitor, if Famous Kid can right the ship as we go into the third and final.
Inferno Dragon has been, I heard Eric call it earlier when you guys were talking about how effective this card is in the meta right now. You know, when you get that right matchup, it can be such a nuisance and so difficult to deal with. Not a lot of ways to reset, not a lot of ways to kite. And we'll see if it pays off. But when you see the double dragons like this, a lot of times we'll see some heavier beatdown, whether it's on the ground or in the skies. Could be Balloon.
Oh, this is absolutely fascinating here, and it is. Balloon does come out, and that Loon going to sneak right on by. Mortar does get the pickup here, but this should be able to at least get death damage. No, nice King Tower activation here from Vitor.
Yeah, really nice King Tower activation. That's going to help a lot with the defenses later on. When you talk about that Ice Wiz NATO combo, you get that King Tower in there to help take that Balloon off the board. And, you know, this is so far out of the first 5 cards we've seen from Famous Kid, a bit of a heavier Loon cycle deck, but we'll see what happens with those final 3.
Inferno Dragon sets up left-hand side as Vitor sets up his Ice Wiz deep in his own territory.
Yeah, a lot of great responses here to the Bloom. When you talk about the Mortar, the NATO, the Fireball, the Ice Wizard, it's going to be all about not committing too much and then finding the perfect spot for these graveyards like that one. Look at that. Vitor very, very happy with that Valkyrie connection.
That Valk got really, really deep in there, and you see what Famous K was going for with the Bowler in the back. But Bowler not quite able to do enough against that graveyard, and the Valk just walked right up front, and this would be a nice Loon behind. We might see some NATO control here one more time. And so Famous Kid is playing Bowler Loon freeze, but that NATO makes things really complicated for him.
Yeah, he's got a nice push coming here, though. Bowler up high, Mega Minion behind. He pulls the Mega Minion away with the NATO to get a little bit more damage in. I don't know if that's the right play in that moment, though.
No, it did feel like a little bit extra, and you know, maybe he was up on Elixir and just felt like he might be able to get something from it with that. Here we go, Bowler in the back, Valk will get into tank, and the Lumberjack now going to control the Valkyrie and help against that graveyard. But a cheeky NATO from Vitor, wow.
Love to see it, and how simple these pushes have been. Valkyrie plus graveyard, and then he can support or not, and he's had very nice cleanup defenses. We need to see a great freeze, and that is, wow, last second pull there with the Mortar.
Fireball in, the freeze not going to do it. NATO does finish things off. Could he freeze here and steal this tower?
He could.
Freeze comes in. Lumberjack trying to go for it. Not gonna happen. Vitor weathers the storm and takes it in game number 3.
By the skin of his teeth, Famous Kid begging for 2 more seconds on the clock. That freeze Bowler plus Lumberjack was doing work on that tower, but you saw there Vitor just in the nick of time, saved by the bell. Beautiful stuff there.
Yeah, I mean, really, really fun stuff. Of course, you saw the King Tower activation there early on, nice and easy with the Mortar. and the tornado, and at that point it felt really, really bad for Famous Kid the whole way through. But this is the first one. You see the Electro Dragon not getting in there very early, the Bowler not helping at all against that Valkyrie, focus on the Graveyard, and that Valk put in a ton of damage, but it was this cheeky play later, Andrew, that sealed the deal.
Yeah, you love to see these up or heads up NATOs pulling units away, getting that Valkyrie on tower once again. From that point on, it was basically in the bag. 1 HP remains, easy NATO to take it off the board. But this last second push by Famous Kid, so close, and it kind of all comes back to that very first Valkyrie Graveyard from Vitor, just not defended adequately by Famous Kid, allowed him to stay on the aggressive, made Famous Kid maybe think twice about getting too aggressive with his NATOs, or excuse me, with his balloon pushes. We saw him get maybe a little loose with his tornado play, and I think maybe those tornadoes could have been used better elixir-wise for freezes.
Let's go take a look at the decks from this one, because, you know, you look at what they had going into that final game, Andrew, and a lot of that came from early on. So P.E.K.K.A. Ram Rider with Poison for Famous Kid. Poison making a bit of a comeback as of late. On the other side of it, Vitor was running Drill, and one of the few times we've seen Drill super struggle here, and maybe a bit of an interesting deck choice out of Vitor.
Yeah, this is just a really tough matchup, man. When you look at it all the way across the board, you have ways to get control over that flying machine. The P.E.K.K.A. is going to do work on the E-Barbs. The Poison's going to take those buildings off the board. So nice stuff there when you talk about decksmanship and matchup in game one. Deck two, though, a little bit more tried and true on both sides of it, but it was the over-aggression from Famous Kid that kind of did him dirty in game two and in three. I think if he would have started cycling those Royal Giants in the back, or at least set himself up for success in double elixir with the Fisherman to pull the P.E.K.K.A. away, but he didn't really ever get to that spot. And then, you know, we just saw game number 3. We knew what it was. We knew the freeze was there, but just not as effective as he'd like to be with that really, really devastating card when played correctly.
And here's what's crazy, Andrew. In 3 of our 4 matches, we've seen Graveyard today.
Yeah.
It just seems wild. We have seen more players play Graveyard today than not play Graveyard today, which I just did not expect this weekend.
I really didn't either. And the crazy thing, too, is that we haven't seen a Mother Witch really capitalize on Graveyard plays. So maybe we'll see more of that later on today, or even tomorrow when you talk about resetting those decks, coming back in and looking what your opponents played today. But that's going to do it for the top of the bracket and the bottom when we start talking about elimination. Muhammad Light and Dark Angel, a very dialed Dark Angel. That was probably the most competitive, you know, heads up set that we saw so far between him and Surge TS, and Surge TS going up against the rookie here in Bruzani. Coco and Famous Kid going to be giving away $4,000 over the next couple matches, brother.
Yeah, that's going to be really, really curious, because you look at the stakes for these players, right? For Brew, there's really no stakes. It's, hey, I'd love to win some more, love to win some cash. On the other side of it, Surge TS is really fighting for placement right now. He's right in that running, he's right in that mix, but he's 22nd at the moment. He could fall out of that that top 24, out of that auto qualification spot, if the chips don't fall the right way over this month and next month. So this is a really, really important match for the Brazilian. The question is does that freedom let Bruzani play with a little bit more loose here?
Why not? At this point, why not? It's the first time we've been calling your matches. You cannot make it to World Finals. The only thing you can do is let people know who you are, make a name for yourself, and get some money in the bank. And Bruzani is in a very good spot to do it, but Surge TS, like you said, back up against the wall. We've seen him come out and play perfect Clash Royale. We've seen him come out and make a handful of mistakes. It's going to be all about the mental game for the Brazilian here. The experience, though, I really believe, I mean, obviously we know who's more experienced here. This is when Surge TS needs to take that experience and run with it. But then there's that wild card of what you just talked about, man. Bruzani has nothing to lose, and it's always tough when you run into guys like that.
Yeah, it's going to be very curious to see what he comes out with. You know, you talk about who they train with. Surge TS trains and plays with the best of the best, with the top tier, and has that infrastructure behind him. Not the same thing here for Bruzani, who has mentioned he trains with his friend Danny, who's also a Clash Royale player. They train together a whole bunch, both better than me, significantly better than most people watching today, but there's we talk about it a lot, Andrew. There's levels to this, and the difference between what Surge TS has been, the iron that's sharpened his iron, versus what Bruzani's been playing with. It's going to be a challenging out, but if he can get the win here, that would be a huge feather in the Americans' cap.
Yeah, you know, he's just turned 16. This is the first time he's able to qualify for a monthly finals. He's been in the top 1,000 every single month this year, but when you talk about points, when you talk about experience, when you talk about being able to stay dialed in, Surge TS has just done it more on the biggest stages in the world and on ladder in grand challenges. So it's going to be a very uphill battle here for Bruzani, but I'm very excited to see if he can pull the upset. We always love to see an underdog win. We always love to see an upset, but of course Surge has put in the work and he wants those world finals.
It's going to be a curious one, and Lava first play out of Surge TS into the Bandit. So, you know, gotta love it here. Yeah. In game number 1.
A lot of people looking for that, and you know, we didn't see it too early in the day, but we did see it on day 1 here. Inferno Dragon going to do some good work against that lava, and we'll see how this fares as this game moves on.
Miner goes right to that E-Wiz, and Pekka goes and makes a bit of room. This is going to be a nasty downhill push for Surge TS to contend with.
Yeah, if only that Pekka would have gotten in front of the Electro Wizard, could have really helped out with this Inferno Dragon. Nice reset there with the snowball, but this push looks like it could just die on the vine.
And it absolutely does. A lot on the board right now for Surge TS. Goes ahead and Miners in front of that, forcing some more defensive play. And that Bandit's going to get eaten up, I believe. No, the Bandit goes to the Miner. The Stab Goblin goes to the Bandit. And that was just a whole bunch of chaos.
Yeah, and you know, we do get a couple Royal Ghost swings out of it, but again, that Inferno Dragon getting value. It looked like it was going to be under control. It looked like there was enough on the board, but the Royal Ghost disappears. Bandit falls off the board because of the Goblins plus the Miner, and pretty much an even game here.
You know, E-Wiz Snowball, you feel like Bruzani should have a decent chance of controlling these Inferno Dragons over time. And you see Lightning as well, and that's absolutely massive. Huge connection, and that's Tower completely chunked on that left-hand lane.
That was absolutely beautiful. Ram Rider takes the Bomber off the board as well. Surge TS not in a great elixir spot, down to below 200 on that tower, and he just sets up with another lava.
That was a great choice, and you know, you don't see much Lightning being run right now. Full-on lava loon push here, and the Miner goes to the back, pulls the Bandit around behind. This is going to be really difficult for Surge TS to get on through. Snowball, Ram Rider, and the Lightning to clean all this stuff up, not to mention the E-Wiz. Pretty good position here for the American.
Yeah, really great control there from the rookie. You saw him layer his defense. That Ram Rider came down late, and at the bottom, we saw the Miner was taken care of. Up high, the Snowball came in. Great stuff there. Lightning going to clean that tower up, and with only 25 seconds remaining, this feels like a game 1 to the American.
Yeah, it really does. You know, Lava's not going to do that much that quick. Balloon maybe, but you see Bandit coming in. E-Wiz working on defense here. And this should be a GG well played. For Surge TS, you know, you thought the E-Wiz might be the real issue here, but the Ram Rider Lightning combination ended up being the real challenge for him as we went through game number 1.
Yeah, and the defense was really nice there. You saw the body block with the Inferno Dragon before the Snowball comes down. The Balloon not as effective as he'd like on any of his pushes. And those aggressive Lightning plays, they're always so fun to watch. Sometimes it's overcommit, sometimes it doesn't work out, but this was absolutely masterful from Bruzani.
Well, it gave him not only the reset, but because of that Ram Rider doing damage, it got the Inferno Dragon all the way off the board, and that's just a huge chunk of damage that Surge really couldn't respond to.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I mean, really, it absolutely was. It was the perfect call there from Bruzani. Got that tower down, and really it was just about playing defense from there on out. And you know how slow that lava is. You know the biggest threat, of course, is the Balloon and that Miner. And those were the 2 targets of focus when you talk about defense. So 1 game away from eliminating Surge TS. Surge TS has to bounce back and pull the reverse sweep here if he wants to stay alive, and probably not the position he expected when he dropped down in the elimination bracket.
No, and this is going to be difficult on both sides for guys to make calls because Brew going with Lightning and Snowball leaves a lot of stuff open. Of course, you're not worried about Ram Rider anymore, obviously, but from how you build the other decks, lots of options. Other side of it, no, people aren't running a ton of, like, when Lava Hound gets run, it doesn't interfere with many other decks, which is why it's a great 4th deck option. I think the big surprise for me here is seeing Surge run it in game number 1 rather than in game 2 or 3 when he had more information. Yeah,
I mean, the only spell out of play for Surge is the arrows there, and I think you saw the bar barrel as well. Maybe not, but yeah, the arrows were played, and that is, I mean, at least it frees him up spell-wise to respond adequately to what, you know, we're going to see out of his opponent, but tough start there.
Yeah, tough start indeed, and this time a bit slower start. No one's pushing the action early on. And we might be seeing Drill out of Bruzani here in game number 2, and Fireball makes short work of that Ice Whiz.
I have to admit, I am very happy to see how much Bomber has come back into the meta, even though it is strictly because of the Drill. But, you know, I like the rework, and I like how effective it is for 2 Elixir.
It is real strong for 2 Elixir. Some players are calling it the most underrated OP card in the game right now. Secretly OP, as some would say. And, you know, we'll see how Bomber fares for Brew in this one with Musketeer out on the board now.
Musketeer, we've seen a little bit more lately. It feels like she kind of fell out of favor for a while, being one of the most played cards in the game, period, for what felt like an entire year. And here we go, aggressive push here from Bruzani. Valkyrie getting up high.
And Graveyard again. It's Graveyard on both sides again. Was there a memo that we missed, Andrew?
I was literally just going to say the same thing. I didn't feel like I heard pros talking about it before we came into the weekend. I feel like I haven't seen a ton of it when watching Twitch, when watching YouTube, but a lot of Graveyard and very, very effective.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have both been casting, you know, other leagues during the off time, and I haven't seen a ton of Graveyard pop up. This is kind of craziness.
So here we go, coming back down, and it's going to be easy defense here. I don't think we'll see an aggressive offensive push out of either of them on this exchange.
You know, one of the things this does speak to, Andrew, we've talked about it before, how a day of CRL can have its own meta emerge, right? Where someone sees something and goes, oh, hey, let me think about that for a minute. And then next thing you know, that idea pops up over and over again. So I don't know if these players all planned to play Graveyard today, or if they saw Graveyard come out in match number 2 and went, hey, I can play that too.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the things about playing against Drill is sometimes you have to find yourself over-defending, and your opponent has such a quick cycle, but those cards are, let's say, just like, you know, they're less elixir, so they're usually not as strong. And the Graveyard pushes, the counter pushes, can be really, really effective. I mean, obviously, neither of these guys running Drill, and shockingly, most of the time we've seen Graveyard, it's come out against another Graveyard, so not quite what they probably planned on, but still very interesting to say the very least.
Very curious situation here. Both guys running Fireball, which, you know, both of those Fireballs kind of helping significantly against major portions of that Graveyard defense. Fireball wiping out the Ice Whiz, Fireball wiping out the Bomber. So very curious to see how these guys both decide to play their defense, as the Valks have been meeting in the middle far more than playing Graveyard defense.
Surge has been doing a great job utilizing his Fireball plus NATO to take the Musketeers off the board. Obviously the biggest offensive threat, but now we see another Graveyard coming down for Brew, and pretty easy cleanup when you talk about the units he's dropped there, and I'm imagining we'll probably see a big counter push with the Graveyard to boot.
Well, what you see there is Surge TS dropping that Ice Whiz the second that Fireball falls, knowing that the card that wipes his Ice Whiz out of contention is gone fairly quickly. Both these guys doing a good job of timing Troop Drop directly after Fireball at the moment.
And you see there, though, Surge taking a massive lead, 984 to 1721. Great use of his counter push there, and maybe a bit of an overspend from his opponent on that Graveyard. I mean, you still want to see the Graveyard come down on that last exchange, but just not maybe enough defensively.
Tesla focusing on the Valkyrie, so Bomber comes out on the back end to deal with that Bar Barrel, and now Graveyard in. Final minute triple elixir. We should see a ton of Graveyards in both directions. The question is who makes a big mistake, and that's a ton of damage up on the top there. Look at all that going in for Bruzani as he defends fairly well against the Graveyard on the bottom.
Yeah, the Ice Whiz came out really high there for Surge, maybe looking to get a lot more value than he did. The problem there was there just wasn't enough on the back end. Ice Whiz was slowing everything down up front. Nice NATO to pull the Musketeer away, but is it just fun to look at, or is it actually going to pay off?
Skeletons to control, Valk controls as well. Musketeer goes, put some damage on the right-hand side. I don't think we'll see lane switching out of Bruzani, but anything could happen here in the final few moments. As the Bar Barrel comes in, NATO pulls all that together and actually kind of saves the Musketeer for a moment, keeps her on the board, and now the push coming in from Bruzani. Final 18 seconds. This is critical.
Yeah, this is a really, really nice push by Bruzani. Those Bombers, though, going to focus, going to demand something out of his opponents. 209 to 563. This is it right here. Can the defense pay off for the rookie? And it looks like it's going to, Rich.
The NATO tries to pull away. Fireball in, and Brew does get the dub, and
Wow.
Surge TS is out. in our first round.
He can't believe it, man. He went up early, and it was just a couple misplays there late in the game. There was that one graveyard that came down from Bruzani where you saw the high Ice Wizard come out from Surge TS. Not, you know, it was a good idea trying not to give too much fireball value, but the problem is that Ice was really up high and in the corner with the Baby Dragon was a great way to clean up, and this is exactly what we're looking at. Ice was up high, Baby Dragon comes down late, and a ocean of damage comes in on that left-hand tower.
Yeah, nothing is playing defense against those skeletons. The Ice was looking the wrong way, and you mentioned it, the late Baby Dragon, and this was just absolutely wild. It really felt like Surge had it kind of locked up there, but that's Graveyard for you, Andrew. We haven't seen it much, but I didn't forget, Graveyard can turn a game on a dime, and you see the idea there for Surge TS, but with the Valkai, the Bomber low, just wasn't going to get it done, and that's a GG well played for the rookie.
I like the adjustment there by the rookie as well, and Bruzani, you know, he was, you have to overspend on defense when you get later in the game going up against Graveyard, but one time he had a great counter push that came in from his opponents that he defended pretty well. He defended pretty well, but he didn't let that happen again. He made sure to vary and stagger out his troops, defend adequately, get a good enough counter push, and he was never overspending again. And again, that high Ice Wizard, just tough from Surge, as you said, facing the wrong direction.
Let's go ahead and take a look at the decks from this best of 3 matchup. Only required 2 though, and game number 1 it was the P.E.K.K.A. Ram Rider, and Surge TS just really had nothing going on here between the Snowball, the Inferno Dragon, the E-Wiz on defense for Brew, and then you add in that huge Lightning Ram Rider push to clear out the board. Just a dominant performance here in game number 1.
Yeah, I mean, he had every response in the book. I mean, literally every single one of those cards, other than the 3 troops you're seeing on the left-hand side, the P.E.K.K.A., the RG, and the Bandit, were able to slow or stop that balloon. And when you look at game number 2, obviously, you know, we saw very, very similar decks in the sense of Graveyard and Valkyries, but it was just all about that clean defense and the Bomber putting in work for Brew.
Absolute work on that Bomber side. You look at the fireballs going both directions, but in the end, it wasn't the fireball that made the Ice Wiz struggle. It was a lack of attention span for the Ice Wiz as he looked away from that Graveyard, and that was a quick change and an absolutely devastating one. But as we said, Andrew, that's what Graveyard, you look away from Graveyard for a second, and next thing you know, you lost a tower.
And you talk about devastating, Rich. I thought you really kind of set it up perfectly when we came into this matchup, was that Surge needed the points. He needed to stick around for at least a little bit longer to breathe that sigh of relief when you talk about being in that top 24, talk about making it to World Finals. But the big time upset from Bruzani, he's going to go on to play against the winner of Coco and Famous Kid. And of course, we do have 2 more matches left today up in our winner side of the bracket, but another elimination coming down, another couple grand to give away, and then it's going to be all about Molite versus Dark Angel and Sandbox, one of our high leaderboard players looking to secure his spot in finals, going up against Vitor 75.
Those are going to be a whole lot of fun indeed, but first we have that Coco Famous Kid matchup, and both of these guys right in the mix. Famous Kid currently number 17 over on the leaderboard, in a good spot, in a pretty good spot, but one where every point certainly does count to stay in that top 24 and not have to go out and make a qualifier play. On the other side of it for Coco, currently 83rd overall on the leaderboard with 282 points. That mark to make it into the top 56 now, right around 340. So needs a great performance here to make himself competitive for that last chance qualifier.
I'm really curious to see if Coco comes out with a little bit more of what we expect, or if he's going to stick to the mortars, the Royal Hogs, the Graveyards, things like that. But you know what, my friend? You get to sit back and watch, and now I get to take over with my good friend, Josh AC Sharon. Former pro. You guys all know who he is. AC, what's up, my brother? What are you thinking? You've been sitting back watching a lot of matches. What's been standing out to you so far?
I think I have to start with Sandbox. I was so impressed with his games. 2-0, I mean, it is... I was pretty blown away. Before these games today, I've always considered him a top player, but nothing, nothing crazy, nothing special like Muhammad Light, those kind of players. And now I've completely flipped. I believe that he belongs to that tier of the high quality players.
And you talk about kind of the victim of Sandbox in Coco here, going up against Famous Kid down in the elimination side of the bracket. Coco played really well. What do you think was his biggest downfall in that set? Or you could go to Famous Kid, you know, who was also down here in the elimination bracket. What do they need to do differently here to stay alive?
Well, I think the main thing, I think the easiest thing that you have to look at for Famous Kid is that I know him. He and Vitor were both talking on Twitter about how they weren't happy, they weren't content with their performances for the top 32 to top 8 bracket. I think he just needs to be calm, collected, and understand that as long as he does his best, that's all he can really ask of himself. And so he has to just play his game.
So we have Famous Kid top of your screen, Coco at the bottom, even though the cameras are swapped here. That is Famous Kid that we're seeing, so maybe we're getting a fix here on production side, but let's get into the gameplay. We see a Musketeer out early with a Earthquake, and bottom of the screen here, Bomber. Always seeing that Bomber.
Yeah, always seeing that Bomber. 2 Elixir. Was it you? Yeah, you were saying that you love seeing the Bomber in the meta. I don't know if I can agree with that. It just is so powerful for just 2 Elixir.
I figured you would. I mean, I remember you running that Golem Bomber deck back in the day, man, and you were one of the first players that really respected the Bomber, and that was even before it got its buff. But here we go, Royal Hogs out again. And what do you think it is about Royal Hogs that fits so well into the competition? We've seen them a lot today.
Well, I mean, you have to play well against Royal Hogs. We saw it in Dark Angel's match where he didn't have that bad of a matchup, but then he kept messing up NATOs, and he was giving up way too much damage because of it. And the other thing is, you know, your opponent has Cage, NATO, Bomber, Dark Prince, and you have Royal Hogs, and you're not out of it whatsoever. You're going to get a lot of Earthquake damage. You're going to be able to, you know, get 1 card out of cycle. You know, you put the E-Giant in the back, and then you get aggressive, and he doesn't have the right elixir to defend it. There's a lot of outplayability with that, you know, with the Royal Hogs and the decks that have Royal Hogs inside. And so that's why it's so popular with all these pros.
Nice lightning there to get that cannon cart off the wheels. 1385 on that top left-hand tower to 1800. Magic Archer rearing its head for the first time today, and Bomber going to make this a really easy cleanup. Nice NATO there.
Yeah, and I like that he's using the Magic Archer variation. I forgot who we saw it from first, but I think Magic Archer paired with E-Giant, Lightning, NATO, it is just so powerful together. You have so many things that you have to watch out for. You can't block at the bridge because then they're just going to NATO it up, and then you get in, you get a lot of value with the Magic Archer. I think it's such a solid idea in theory. I don't always think it is like the strongest offensively, but I really like the deck choice from Coco.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best things about that, and the Lightning is actually going to do the work, but this is what I was actually going to talk about, is the Magic Archer. You know, that E-Giant has such a massive sight range. The Magic Archer can really help clean up those far defensive buildings played, but you get that coupled with the Lightning, and it's going to be difficult for Famous Kid to keep those E-Giants at bay. E-Giant's such a strong win condition, and honestly, I thought we'd see a little bit more of it, but it's still very early in our weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, the reason, I mean, it's so strong, and then right now this deck is just, this matchup for Famous Kid is so difficult because even when he defends properly and everything goes his way, he has the Inferno Dragon on defense, so he can take out the Valk, he can take out the Cannon Cart, he can take out the Musketeers, and then, you know, the Inferno Dragon is going to be tanking for his own Goblin Cage, for his own Dark Prince and everything. It is just so difficult for him to get past. But again, like I was saying earlier, he has all these answers, and it's only 100 HP separating the two plays. These defensive Royal Liveries and these offensive Earthquakes are getting him a ton of damage.
Yeah, that Magic Archer got so much value for Coco, but ended up not really being able to turn it into as much damage as he would have liked. And there you see the Cannon Cart maybe looking for something dropped up high at the bridge. Instead goes Inferno Dragon out from the South Korean. And maybe we see another Lightning come down here in a moment because we're not going to get that E-Giant to tower.
Yeah, I mean, really stellar defense right there. Cannon Cart getting caught by the Inferno Dragon isn't a great thing, but it's also not the worst thing either. You have it caught by the Inferno Dragon, and then it becomes another tank, or it becomes another building for the E-Giant to go to it. And right here, I like this pressure from Famous Kid. He has to try and get aggressive, try and not allow him to go in with as many Lightnings as he wants to, and this is going to get really close.
And that Magic Archer will get one shot in. That's a big-time shot. 4:43 remains. You know what Lightning's going to come down here in just a moment. Defense, though, first. We see a Goblin Cage come out and then an aggressive mortar out of his opponent, but I believe it's going to be too little, too late. Lightning is in, and that should do it. Wow. That was incredibly close, man.
Yeah, oh my goodness, what a battle right there. He did everything that he could. Coco just playing, you know, I like that he got the lightning on top of the mortar because then it slows it down, but I don't think it was really necessary. Maybe if he predicts that, he can possibly lightning block. But I mean, just what a game overall.
I mean, you talk about that Magic Archer getting value. It was just that one shot at the end that gave him the separating HP, just enough to edge out his opponent. Great stuff from both of these guys. I was really impressed with how well Famous Kid was actually able to defend these big pushes with the E-Giant, the Lightning, get that Magic Archer up high to take that mortar off the board. But really nice stuff, as you call it, Josh, with that royal delivery, cleaning stuff up at the bridge, not allowing the Bomber or the Inferno or really the Dark Prince to get too much value once they cross the river.
Yeah, I do want to look at that last push. I wonder what was going through his head when he goes in with the mortar, because I think it's kind of clear that it's not going to be able to get on tower. And so that's basically 4 elixir you're wasting. Maybe if you go Spear Goblins and then you get to the Earthquake a little bit quicker, that can change the game. It's interesting to see why he chose to do that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe defending and then a spell cycle would have given him a better position than getting that mortar up high, as you just said. And as we just saw, gets cleaned up off the board, gives lightning value where his opponent needs it. And now 1 game away from elimination is Famous Kid. You know, when he filled out the questionnaire coming into the weekend, as all CRL pros do, he talked a lot about E-Giant being one of his favorite win conditions. Do you think maybe he bounces back with that now?
You know, I just want to see... I think I would like him to take that exact deck, because, you know, you feel confident, and, you know, you kind of say like, oh, you only won because of the deck itself, not because you outplayed me, anything like that. I would like to see him try and use that.
Yeah, no overlap in cards there, and now we see a Bomber out early on, so could be the case, but still a lot to be said here. And Bandit really popular with Royal Ghost right now. There's a lot of different iterations out there, some with Wall Breakers, some with P.E.K.K.A, some with Goblin Drill, so we'll see which version we're going to see.
Yeah, I would like to see the Goblin Drill. I've just, you know, it's been talked about. We've seen Graveyard versus Graveyard 1,000 times, and we're not seeing a lot of Drill. I don't know why so many players are hesitant to use it. And I mean, I think it's basically you use Drill in one of your decks and then you worry about the other 2 decks. I think that's what you should be doing every set.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously these guys are exponentially better than I'll ever be, but it does feel like a bit of a surprise that we haven't seen more of, I think without a doubt, the strongest card in the strongest win condition in the game. But maybe a lot of players were expecting to see so many counters to it because of how strong it is. They decided to just completely veer away.
Right, and here we go. We get the Lava Loon push already, a minute 30 into the game, and this is a lot going down the field, but a nice little snowball. No E-Wiz in time, but it's not going to matter. Oh, that's still a lot of damage, though.
Yeah, that is a big hit there, and not a lot of defensive options. You see the E-Wiz out of cycle, Snowball out of cycle, and the Mother Witch is there, but we all know that she does not do a ton of damage in that slow attack speed.
And forces out the E-Wiz right there. That is so unfortunate for Coco. Doesn't want to tank the 400 damage, and I understand why, because once it gets within that 300, 400 HP range, you can go in with Miner, chip it away with just the arrows. And yeah, I mean, it's difficult in that situation. No Bandit in cycle, so he had to use Ghost or E-Wiz. Uses E-Wiz, and now it's going to put him in a tough spot to defend this Lava Loon.
So Ram Rider going to come in, but that Ram Rider is going to be focused first on that Lava Hound. Really nice fireball there, gets on top of both the units. Snowball does slow everything down with a high E-Wiz, but just not the defense I think that Coco wanted to put down on the board here. Balloon going to sneak on through for at least 1 drop.
Yeah, this is phenomenally set up from Famous Kid. I mean, he's doing everything that he needs to, getting the fireball exactly how it's supposed to be. And that's going to be tower down and left tower at 700. Just needs to put a lava in the pocket, and that tower is going to be gone as well. I love what he's done in this game.
Yeah, we see a last-ditch effort here by Coco to stay in, and that's a pretty good hit there. Now we're going to see a Mother Witch come down, try to get some piggies on the board, but again, does feel like too little too late with 8 seconds left. Miner there to catch that dash from the Bandit to protect the Bomber, and that's going to do it. We're going to game number 3. Beautiful lava plays there from Famous Kid.
Yeah, that's such a risky deck. I mean, you are worried about going against these Ram Rider decks that are going to have E-Wiz and Quick Cycle and Fireball and Poison that you can defend. And, I mean, it really didn't matter for him. A slight mistake with the Skellies on top of the Bandit, but that was his only mistake throughout. I mean, it was just gorgeous gameplay other than that, and a definite deserved win right there.
So we see there, nice defense to stop that balloon from connecting, but the Miner comes in with all of those pups, gets a ton of damage down. On the other side of it, looking at Coco's cards and looking at his responses, this was the big push. They both had the elixir to defend, they both had the elixir to go on offense, but it just felt like Coco was out of sorts in defending this, because earlier we saw how well you can defend with the cards that he had. The Ram Rider wasn't placed in the right spot, the Electro Wizard had to come down late. Just tough stuff there when you talk about defending that Lava Loon push.
Yeah, there was just a few too many mistakes, stacking a little bit too much. There was times when he was only trying to get a Mother Witch, and then he also clipped the Ghost. It's just a lot of tiny errors that just snowballed so quickly, and it was, you know, it just happens that he was able to get through.
One of the things we saw earlier too was waiting for that balloon to kind of pick and choose where it was going to go around that Lava Hound. Then you saw the Ram Rider come down to slow it, then the E-Wiz, then the Snowball, or even the Inferno in there to body block is what we saw earlier in the day. So maybe just not sequenced the correct way when you talk about taking those balloons off the board. But we are going to game number 3. We do have $2,000 to give away after this. And after what you've seen in these first 2 matchups, Josh, we're seeing bait here out of Coco early on.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. I mean, when you use bait, you got to hope that you're not going against Fire Spirit. And if you're not, then, you know, you're going to feel good. But it's just, bait is so scary, especially, you know, if you're known for those kind of decks. Because if you go against a Fire Spirit deck, you basically automatically lose.
Yeah, it can be really, really difficult when you talk about that +2 trade every single time the barrel comes down, which is one of the strongest parts, or the strongest win condition, if you will, in that deck. And here we see a big connection on that left-hand side, which means that we're probably going to see a bigger push here on the right from Famous Kid.
Yeah, I'm thinking he has MK Graveyard, going in with a Baby Dragon Graveyard, not the MK instead. I understand what he's doing because he's trying to tank and then get a lot of damage early on. He already understands 20 seconds into the game that this is going to be a brutal matchup for him. Bait, Cycle, he's got Skeletons, Ice Spirit, Log, Valk. He doesn't really have many answers for those troops, so he's trying to get a win in single elixir. I love what he was trying to do there. I just don't think it's going to matter. I mean, this is the exact matchup that Coco's looking for.
Yeah, it feels already sewn up at this point. That was a really, really nice Tesla play near that Princess Tower. Gets the Baby Dragon off the board. Princess is already stacking up early on. And that clean defense came even with the sacrifice damage of Famous Kid on the left-hand side from the barrel. And we've already seen, I believe, 3 barrels come out from Coco. So this is a tough spot to be in. And now we see Famous maybe going in the same lane to slow the bleeding.
Yeah, as we head into double elixir, maybe he can do something, and there we go. We do see the MK. It is just, I think maybe in the first push, you try and get the MK in front of the Night Witch, and then possibly go either a super delayed Graveyard or maybe a Baby Dragon as well with the push. It's just, that was a very aggressive push that almost felt like it wasn't going to be something, and that's a lot of damage right there.
Yeah, really, really nice poison there. Gets the Princess off the board, helps with the Tesla, then that late Snowball comes in and gets that tower down to 1136, but barrel back out in the opposite direction. If this does go to a 2-tower game, who is strongly in favor?
I think it would still have to go to bait, just because you're going to have both towers available. You can do the Valks on top. But I don't know, it's going to get tricky, and I think like a 2-tower situation, that's just good for Famous Kid. He's content with getting it to 2 towers. He's okay with that happening. Although we might not see 2 towers, he just needs 1 poison. And this might be a victory for him.
Valkyrie up high, Goblin Cage comes down late. Princess, though, does connect to the tower. Rocket comes in, 167 remains, not enough time to get the poison down, and Coco skates by just barely.
Yeah, you can see the pain in Famous Kid. I love what he did in the overall game. He was getting a lot of poison value. He was doing everything that he could. And I was hoping perhaps that it could have been a log bait version without Rocket, and then maybe he's able to come back. Instead, it throws the Rocket out with 2 seconds left. I mean, it got weird for Coco, and that's honestly all you can ask when you're playing the deck that Famous Kid is running. But it just wasn't enough, and then he was able to tighten up his defense when he needed to and was able to get the win.
I wonder if he would have pulled back on that very first graveyard and just played defense, if he would have been able to actually take this game. That damage that he sacrificed early from that Goblin Barrel was tough when you talk about late game and how much control he had.
Yeah, it's almost like he was surprised that he was getting as much damage as he was once the game was actually like a regular game overall, and it wasn't just, you know, who has the right cycle, all that kind of stuff. Because yeah, he was getting 800 damage, 600 damage, 1,000 damage when he was going in with the graveyards.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about, you know, playing that Tesla up high. You don't have the Valkyrie there to meet the Mega Knight, so the Tesla's up high to take the Mega Knight off the board. Valkyrie down low with skeletons, but that snowball was giving such great room to Famous Kid there. Maybe just a little bit more patience earlier on. He defends that Goblin Barrel, and he finds himself walking away with the victory, but instead he's going to be walking away with $2,000 and an elimination here as we head back up into the winner side of the bracket. After we talk through a little bit more of these matchups, pretty interesting matchups when you talk about who was actually in favor. And talk me through it here in game number one.
Right, game number one, I mean, it comes down a lot because overall, once the game was underway, Famous Kid was defending easily. I mean, he has Mortar, he has Valk, he has Royal Delivery, but it was, I think it was 3 shots from the Goblin Cage Brawler early on in the game, and he was able to coast off that, defend well, try and line up, and if you don't get the lineups with a Magic Archer, that's okay. It allows him to play a lot safer and a lot easier for him. And then the Royal Hogs, it just wasn't enough for Famous Kid.
Yeah, I would love to see maybe some Earthquake cycle late game, but it's always tough to pick and choose where you want to get that defense down. So here we go into game number 2. We talk about the responses here. You know, the Electro Wizard, the Snowball, the Mother Witch, the Ram Rider, just not able to get on top of the balloon the way that Coco would have liked. And Famous Kid did a really, really good job of recognizing where his opponent was at in his cycle and going hyper aggressive. And then what you guys just saw here in game number 3, maybe just a little over aggressive out of Famous Kid early on, when he could have really kind of, you know, when you're playing Graveyard, Josh, you're trying to make your money in double and triple, not really in single.
Right. I mean, you have to play slower. You have to play patient. That's the entire reason I never got into Graveyard, because I don't want to wait 2.5 minutes before I do my first push and then wait another 1.5 minutes and then win the game. It doesn't matter. It doesn't feel like a real victory. Right there, it would have felt like a real victory had he got that.
Yeah, I mean, you were talking about what he was trying to do in single elixir just because of the bad matchup with bait, and like what you were saying, it was almost like he was surprised how effective that Graveyard was coming through. But that's going to do it for Famous Kid as the two of them wait down an elimination to see who wins here between Mohamed Light and Dark Angel, and of course Sandbox and Vitor, which is the next or the second matchup of the day between Sandbox and Vitor. Hashtag Sandbox or hashtag Vitor down in the chat. Let us know what you're thinking. Get your votes in. And I have a feeling, Josh, you're leaning in favor of the South Korean after the praises that you spoke of him right when you came on broadcast.
Absolutely. I don't know if I can say he's my favorite overall to win everything. I mean, it is just hard to go against Mohamed Light. But yeah. I will say 100%, I feel so confident in Sandbox gameplay. I just got to say that I'm shocked that I wasn't able to recognize it before.
I always like to be a contrarian, so I'm going to go with Vitor. So we're split down, we're split down the middle here on the broadcast. But first, we got to go to Mohamed Light and Dark Angel. And it's tough, man, because Dark played really well. We saw great composure out of him. You know, you heard Eric and Rich talk a lot about how much he's matured over the last couple of years, last few seasons. But Mohamed Light just felt unstoppable. I mean, he's been sitting back for over an hour and a half now, I believe, just hanging out after a quick 2-0 against Bruzani. Do you think there's any way that Dark Angel plays through the, what did Eric call him? Rich, the Prince of Egypt. I've been calling him the golden-chaired golden boy just for fun, but I do love the Prince of Egypt call.
Yeah, okay, so this is where you take that maturity thing and you throw it out the window, get immature, get crazy. That's the only way to beat someone like Muhammad Light. It's the only way to beat someone like Ruben when he was in his form, and even now when it's just impossible to match up against some of these players and think you even have a shot. So I'd love to see Dark maybe pull out like a Night Witch healer giant deck or something along the lines of that. Don't get too wild, but I do want to see him, you know, at least experiment a little. Otherwise, I think Muhammad Light, he's just so in control with everything that he does that it's going to be impossible to beat him.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to play his game, and his game is that fast cycle. You see right now, though, he's coming out with Ram Rider in game 1, trying not to be too predictable. I would love to see something like you were just saying, something weird out of Dark Angel, you know, Night Witch clone. Obviously, we're not going to see that here. Or Night Witch Golem clone would be fun just because it's in the meta right now. It's maybe not as predictable. We haven't seen it yet today. But Mo Light here, not rocking quick cycle. He gets those piggies on the right-hand tower and a nice connection here on the left, already in the lead.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that Muhammad Light continues to go to Ram Rider for his non-cycle decks. I guess Julesy and Muhammad Light have both agreed that it complements his other decks so well that they think that that's the best thing for him. And I mean, we've seen that it so far has been, because not only does he get good matchups, but I mean, we have just seen excellent gameplay from someone who's only considered a cycle player.
Yeah, and it is nice to see him go a little bit heavier. And when you talk about that drill defense, he's still got it locked down with the cards at hand. The Royal Ghost is there. You can even use the Ram Rider to clean things up and then tank for those goblins while taking them off the board. And of course, the Snowball. We've been seeing a lot of Snowball. Do you think this is going to be kind of the cheap card, the cheap spell card that's now in the meta? We've seen so much of it today.
Yeah, I mean, especially in these like dual formats, Snowballs, and there we go. We do see a giant kind of deck. Giant Graveyard. I absolutely love Dark Angel's deck choice. This is exactly what he needs to do to give himself a shot at beating someone who's, I mean, he is the consensus #1 right now. It is just impossible to disagree with that. And yeah, I mean, this is what I like to see from Dark.
And a nice downhill push coming from Mo Light. A lot up front to tank for that Ram Rider. We see the P.E.K.K.A. going to get pulled away, so the Ram Rider will connect on tower there, bringing it down below 1,400 HP. But a nice counter push here and enough elixir to get a graveyard down in a moment, but instead decides to pile on with the Mega Minion behind.
Yeah, not going to be able to get the Fireball out in time, so can't get the Giant on top of the tower. I like the push because it forced him to not be able to defend with the P.E.K.K.A., but you've got to be careful if you don't have Fireball. Your big advantage of not allowing a P.E.K.K.A. on defense against the Giant means nothing if he's still going to be able to defend with Inferno Dragon.
Bandit on tower, tanked for by that Piggy. Fisherman pulls the Ram Rider away, but Muhammad Light has been doing a phenomenal job of not getting too aggressive, defending really, really clean, and then turning those defenses into massive counter pushes. And he's been changing up how he likes to play them, whether it's Ram Rider up high and in the middle, or we see the Bandit at the bridge there behind the Mother Witch Piggy. He's been varying it up, which is making it really difficult for Dark to figure out how he wants to defend.
Yeah, and I really like what he's doing. He continues to leak elixir to allow Dark Angel to play into him. And right here, that's going to be a Giant on tower, and that's going to be a lot of damage. Inferno Dragon is going to get a lot of damage on the left lane, but it's not going to be too much. Right tower down to 820, and Dark Angel is absolutely back in this game. I love this pressure. Giant at the bridge is exactly what he needs to do.
Absolutely. Not enough elixir there to get the P.E.K.K.A. back on the board. Fireball maybe can come in to reset. Not going to need it. Giants on the tower. And Josh, this is exactly what you were talking about at the very beginning of this matchup. You wanted to see something weird out of Dark Angel. Well, Giant Graveyard is paying off.
Yep, 169 HP, needs to do what he can to defend. Good Fisherman, has to be careful about everything. Fireball is in cycle.
What a beautiful thread of the needle there with the Fisherman at the end. It locks onto the Ram Rider. We're all blown away. Dark Angel, you see the big time celebration. Muhammad Light can't believe it. You and I are speechless. That was brilliant Clash, and you called it from the opening card, man. You wanted to see Giant. We saw it. The P.E.K.K.A. was there to respond. The Ram Rider was there to respond. The Poison was there to respond. What a beautiful game by Dark Angel.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Muhammad Light's gameplay and you say, okay, you know, he's doing everything that he can. You know, he's at 10 elixir, but he's not going to waste the Ghost. He wants to wait so that way Dark Angel is forced to go into him. And he does everything that he can, but once that double elixir happens, once that triple elixir happens, he can put Muhammad Light in such awkward spots. We saw it there. He gets an incredibly aggressive fireball, but he's still able to defend because of how strong Dark Angel's deck overall is and how strong his defense overall is as well. I mean, every troop was almost getting to the tower, but every troop was placed perfectly from Dark Angel, and that's a flawless victory right there.
Dark had a really great downhill push behind that giant. He ticked to 5, and he would have been able to put the graveyard down, but instead, and I was calling it out on broadcast, he decided to go with the Mega Minion to help his cycle back around, because by the time that first giant went down, he had the second one down at the bridge, which is what we just saw right there. Gets a ton of damage in, outcycles Muhammad Light's P.E.K.K.A, not able to get enough straight DPS on top of the giant, and then it was devending from there on out, and a spell cycle from Dark Angel. That was incredible, man. I loved it. And again, to go back to what Eric and Rich were saying, that was a very composed Dark that stayed in the game, even though he was down for what felt like 4.5 minutes of it.
Right. I mean, it was just so smart. Everything was calculated from him. And he's using one of those off-meta decks that he's well known for, and the reason why he's known for it is because he's one of 3 players that can actually play those kind of decks with any amount of success, and right here goes immediately into one of the most meta decks possible. I love this change of pace from him.
Yeah, drill, wall breakers. We've been seeing so many different combinations of that. I saw Expo Master post one last night with Princess Bandit, Cannon Cart, and Hunter in there. The first time I've seen Hunter in a long time. So one thing I do like about drill is even if it's overplayed, even if it's overpowered, there's so many great iterations of that deck that you can't always know exactly what you're going to see. You know, for the longest time when we saw E-Giant for the first time, and there's the Hunter. Look at that at the bottom of your screen. For the first time we saw E-Giant, for what felt like maybe the first 10 games we saw it was just the exact same composition with maybe one card swapped out. I do like the variations around the Goblin Drill right now.
Right. I mean, we saw, I forgot who it was, but he was using a bridge spam control MK deck with it. I think it was Vitor maybe.
Yeah.
And it is just so, it kills me talking nicely about the card, but I mean, it is true. Like, you get to see so many different things with it, which I do really appreciate.
There's so many great different ways to create pressure, whether it's Magic Archer with the NATO to line things up, and as you can see here, 2 very different looks from both of these guys. But this goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning of game number 1. Now you're in Momo's world. This is his thing. Now this deck cycles very quickly when you look at the log, plus the Spirit, plus the Skellies. It's got great defensive capabilities when you talk about that Hunter plus Valkyrie. So we're going to see how these guys stack up, and we are seeing, again, a bit of that bridge spam version here with the Royal Ghost, with the Bandit, with the Wall Breakers to kind of pair up with that drill.
Yeah, now that we're in double elixir, you have to assume that his spell is Fireball, but it is certainly going to be interesting to see how he wants to defend these things. The Hunter is just not a card that we see often. In fact, when you said that, I think it was Expo Master was using that deck, yeah. I really just didn't believe you. And then right here, we see the Hunter get played. It's going to be cool to see if he can actually figure out a way to get value from it.
I appreciate you not calling me out, though, and I'm even happier that Mo decided to rock it, because I promise you, I saw it on Twitter. I've been trying to work it out, and it's interesting because the Hunter does respond pretty well to the Goblin Drill when you talk about, you know, just a straight-up 4-for-4 trade. It is obviously a bit of fireball bait, and yeah, like you said, I'm excited to see how Muhammad Light wants to use it here, and much better with it than I am, of course.
Yeah, and 6 seconds left. I mean, he's doing everything that he can, but I mean, he just can't stop these Valkyries that continue to get placed in the middle. But this is a nice push. If he can take care of the Valkyrie, it's just clear that he's not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, Muhammad Light just playing really, really clean defense, up by over 1,000. We see the Valkyrie get a swing on both those wall breakers. That's not what Dark Angel wants to see, and that does feel like a bit of the nail in the coffin when you talk about the overspend there, the lack of time remaining, and the amount of control that Muhammad Light has.
Right, and I mean, you see the way he defended that. He didn't want to use his log. That way he can possibly get more log value on offense. But also, we see how quickly he cycled that. He's trying to set up for the double Tesla, and right there we do see it. Now, I mean, it is basically guaranteed over. He has multiple Teslas up. He has the Valkyries placed perfectly. He's forcing his opponent to do defensive wall breakers. Yeah. And I mean, this is sad to watch. But, you know, it's kind of expected when Mohamed Light is using these kind of cycle decks.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the Valk, the Drill, the Tesla. This is Mohamed Light's bread and butter. So it's really going to come down to game number 3 and what we're going to see out of both of these guys. Dark Angel knows it's over. Not quite as close as it was in game number 1. And a very nice back and forth in their 7th matchup of the day. But now it's all about what do these guys play. We saw something weird out of Dark Angel in game 1. They both go to Drill in game number 2. Mohamed Light doesn't have the Ram Rider that he's liked, you know, that we've seen early on out of him that hasn't been cycles. So what do we see in game number 3? I'm not going to put that on you. Let's talk about these highlights first.
Oh, thank goodness, because, I mean, trying to predict that is just going to be a little bit too difficult for me.
So here we go. Not a lot of room here for the wall breakers at any point in this game, you know, whether they were played defensively at the end or when you talk about the Valkyrie just getting so much value on top of them. You see right there, Valkyrie takes out the Mega Knight and gets a hit on those wall breakers. Tesla, of course, is there to help. Mohamed Light, as you said late in game, was stacking the Teslas up high to help with that Inferno Dragon, and there was just no way for Dark to break through. Can you switch lanes late game in this drill meta, or is it pretty much over because your opponent gets those drills down so quickly with the fireball in hand that when you're down a handful of elixir, you just got to kind of stick to the lane that you've got a little bit of damage in?
You know, I think if Fire Spirit wasn't in the meta, you would be able to switch lanes. But the problem is when you're trying to swap lanes and you go Inferno Dragon in the back and then you only have the MK in response, yes, you can play the MK on top of the Goblin Drill, but you're still giving up 150 damage from Splash. And then you also add in the log, and if you cycle anything in the back, you also add in the fireball damage. All of a sudden, your perfect defense, you've still given up 450 HP worth of damage.
So the best cycle player in the world does exactly what you'd expect in game number 2, and we saw the giant graveyard pay off for Dark Angel in game number 1. Here we go. Game number 3. One of these guys is going to have to head down to the elimination side of the bracket. Mohamed Light gets a nice King Tower activation to start his run.
Okay, and then Dark Angel, I was trying to think. There's no shot that he runs Expo with everything on the line. I love to see him, you know, mess around with all sorts of things. I would not like to see him use Expo in this. And right here, we are going to see RG Earthquake go against what looks to be the Royal Hogs Mortar. Mohamed Light with a great matchup in game number 3, as long as he can defend these RGs. But, I mean, he has Mortar. This should be pretty easy for him.
So there you go. Mortar comes down late. Going to focus on that right-hand tower, but also going to get a nice shot there on that Royal Giant. Great placement there from Mohamed Light. And yeah, like you said, going to be a bit tough here for Dark.
Yeah, I want to see... I mean, we always see the Mortar get placed in the middle, but if you are going to defend with a Musketeer, I'm surprised that not very many people use the Mortar like directly on top of the RG. Then it's allowed to get on top of the tower. It's something that I never see from players. And, you know, it's just something to look at. Because when you see late in games, then you start seeing it once it hits triple elixir. But if you have the Musketeer on defense, you don't need to use it on top of the RG the way he placed it earlier.
He's also got a lot of great responses to if that Mortar does go up high, he takes the RG off the board and it's still alive, and anything else comes down from his opponent. You know, he's got great cards to set the line when you talk about the delivery, the Knight, and if you really wanted the cannon cart there to kind of keep those E-Barbs at bay. And here we go. E-Barbs up high on top of the Musketeer and cannon cart with the piggies on the right-hand side with an Earthquake. That's going to be a good amount of damage.
Yeah, that is, but that is a lot of elixir to be spending, and I like what Dark Angel is doing. He realizes, like, hey, you know, I can give up that amount of damage, but this counter push is going to be insane. RG fully healthy getting on top of the tower.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised to see the Earthquake come in from Mohamed Light there on the right-hand side. Just felt like you said, Josh, a bit of an overspend, but 963 to 1282, a pretty good spot for Mohamed Light to be in when you talk about being able to get those Royal Hogs on tower and having that Mortar to defend.
Yeah, and here we go. We see it again. RG placed at the bridge. There's one player and one player only in, you know, that is currently one of these better players in the game that continues to do the RGs at the bridge, and that's Dark Angel. For some reason, he hates playing so slow-played RGs, and he only wants to play them at the bridge every single time.
Great damage there on the right-hand side. Cannon Cart does connect on the left, but again, too little, too late. 376 remains, 883 on the left-hand side. Muhammad Light fully in control with great pressure.
Yeah, and right there, that is one of the most brutal interactions I've ever seen. He can't give up a lick of damage, and so it forces out E-Barbs on top of Spirit Goblins. Easy swap of the lanes from Muhammad Light, and that's going to be game over. Feeling good. You see the smile from Muhammad Light. Scary for game number 1, but he's able to bounce back.
Yeah, he was just completely in control after that first game was in the books. You loved what you saw there matchup-wise. You loved how he played it, and as you just said, getting those E-Barbs out on Spear Goblins. Brutal stuff there. You can't sacrifice any damage. So what do you have to do? Sacrifice a ton of elixir. Muhammad Light sees the door wide open. He goes for a massive push on the left-hand side. I believe it was Royal Hogs plus the Cannon Cart plus maybe one other. Maybe the Knight was even in there as well. Yeah, and that's just tough stuff there. Dark Angel just not able to do it. And Josh, you were talking about how he loves to play those RGs at the bridge. And, you know, that might be his play style, but we've seen what's more tried and true, and maybe for him it would have been cycling those RGs in the back at least one time. One RG cycled in the back just to see what he could have done.
Right. When you're trying to go against Mortar, you need the RG to be placed in the back, especially when you have Earthquake, because double RG at the bridge and double Elixir, triple Elixir, plus EQ that can possibly catch Spear Goblins as well. That is so much value and so much going down the lane. But I mean, it's tough. You're going against Muhammad Light. You try and stack RGs, he's going to go in with, you know, the Knight, Cannon Cart, Royal Hogs at the bridge. And so it's not going to happen. So it's difficult, but you have to try and set yourself up to be able to succeed.
I did like what we saw out of Muhammad Light. We saw the Ram Rider, the Goblin Drill, and of course the Royal Hogs there at the very end with the Mortar. We're going to talk through that right now. And this was fun. This was a lot of fun to see in game number 1. It was, you know, made Muhammad Light maybe wake up a little bit, not able to get a lot of value with his Mother Witch on the graveyards, wasn't able to get the poisons down when he'd like to clean up those skeletons, and of course got outcycled at the very end there with the P.E.K.K.A. not able to come down on top of that second giant. So really, really well played by Dark Angel, doing what you said he's great at, playing a little bit off meta, but Muhammad Light bounces back when they do go to that Goblin Drill matchup.
Yeah, I mean, it was so simple for him. He just kept applying pressure and trying to get the Fire Spirit damage when he needed to, just defending with the Hunters on top of the, you know, basically whatever came down the lane. He was able to figure out that card, even though apparently only 2 people are currently figuring out that card.
Excuse me.
Three. And yeah, I loved what I saw. And it was just an easy game 2 for Muhammad Light.
And here we go, game number 3. You called it very early on, talking about a rough matchup. Would have been nice to see those Royal Giants cycled in the back for exactly what you were just breaking down for us. You get that dual lane pressure with the RGs. You have the Earthquake there to clean things up in double and triple. The Firecracker would have been great as well. Just you saw a few times that Firecracker lined up and got a little bit of damage on tower, but it was just tough stuff. The over-aggressive Royal Giants made it so that, you know, Muhammad Light could bait out that 6 Elixir E-Barb drop for 2 with those Spear Goblins, and that's just Muhammad Light understanding the macro of the game as well as being perfect with the micro. So Muhammad Light moves on, stays in that winner bracket, looking to become another repeat champion after Lucas X Gamer did it last month. But he does have to get through either Sandbox or Vitor, which is our last match and second match of the day. Sandbox versus Vitor. I want to see your guys' votes. We're split down the middle here. You went Sandbox, I went Vitor, but if I'm being 100% honest, I might be leaning towards where you're at as well, just because what we saw at him was so clean, and he was playing a little bit of the unpredictable, if you will, in that first set, whereas, you know, now after we've gone through 7 matches, what he was playing seems a little bit more on meta, at least for today.
Right, yeah. I mean, it is hard to root against Sandbox right now, and, you know, you really want to, because that's what makes a great talk show. That's what makes a great cast, but it is difficult, and right there we see it, 68% for Sandbox, 32% for Vitor. Kind of what I expected. You know, you still are going to have the supporters of Vitor. Obviously a phenomenal player, but yeah, it is difficult to root against Sandbox right now.
Yeah, Sandbox, one of the only players that we haven't seen the Goblin Drill out of today, and even with that, we see a basically 70% tick for him to take this over Vitor. But we have seen at least one upset so far, if you want to call it that, where Bruzani took down Surge TS in the elimination bracket and eliminated him from competition. But Sandbox, he's been so good all season long, and it sounds like he finally won you over today with that set, playing really, really clean against Coco. 600 leaderboard points here to 381 from Vitor, and this feels like an uphill battle for Vitor, but who knows? Anything can happen here at CRL, and I'm excited to see what these guys come out with.
Yeah, deck choices is going to be, you know, the main thing for Vitor. We saw him try and use this weird variation of Goblin Drill, and he immediately got punished. That cannot happen if you want to succeed against someone like Sandbox. Every deck has to be exact. Every deck has to give you at least a 40, 45, 50% chance of winning the matchup. You can't give yourself, like, you can give yourself one of those decks that, you know, can either really win really easily or lose really easily, but you still want to have faith in yourself, and you need to be trying to stay with somewhat comfort. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're going against one of the best players. It's hard to really tell him what to do.
Well, right now we are seeing a little bit more tried and true out of Vitor so far. We see the Ice Spirit plus the Skellies. I was going to say it looks like Hog Cycle, and Hog Cycle really strong right now, but also at the highest level, it's one of those decks you just don't see as much. You know, Expo's really popular in the meta right now. 2.6 is pretty popular in the meta right now. Hog Cycle is very popular, but we don't see those types of iterations or those types of decks much at CRL, just because you make one mistake or you find yourself down early on, and it can be really tough to come back.
Right, people don't understand. It is a serious thing when you're playing with $20,000 on the line. Your hands will shake. I can play a $15 bracket tournament for a streamer, and my hands will shake. It is something that is going to happen to a lot of these players, and that's why you so often see, hey, you know, he's considered one of the best Cycle players. Why is he not using Cycle right now? It's because you have to get that confidence in yourself. Otherwise, just because you know where to place the troop doesn't mean that's where your fingers are actually going to let it happen.
And it can be so unforgiving late game when you get into double and triple elixir against these guys that truly understand these matchups, because again, just because they're not played at CRL doesn't mean they don't run into them in grand challenges and on ladder all the time. And we see a bit of the tilt to the head there from Sandbox after we see the Inferno Tower come out. It's the second time I think we've seen the Inferno Tower today, and very, very effective in certain situations, and we'll see how Vitor wants to utilize that sizzle and burn in this matchup.
Yeah, I really want to see his last card, because you have to assume it's Earthquake, but it could definitely be something like Fireball and even possibly something like Lightning, but you have to assume Earthquake. But the Inferno Tower, the reason why he shakes his head, every troop that he has, the Mega Minion, the Valkyrie, the Cannon Cart, those are going to get destroyed. And when you can't place things at the bridge because he can block with his Valkyrie and then defend with a Musketeer for little to no damage, this is incredibly difficult for him to defend and properly go on offense.
We are seeing a lot of head shaking here from Sandbox. The Inferno Tower was the first one that brought it out. That late Hog hit was another on that last or second to last Hog send. And then of course on the most recent Hog push, there was the Fireball that comes in, but still another big hit there from Vitor. Now we see the Earthquake Cycle come out perfectly on top of that Tesla. Mega Minion should clean up the Hog before it gets a hit, but this is not the spot you want to be in. Sub 1,000 against this deck can cycle so quickly. Those Earthquakes and Logs stack up really fast.
Yeah, I mean, Vitor put the Inferno Tower down 30 minutes ago, or what felt like 30 minutes ago, and it was still able to get the value on top of the Cannon Cart. He can just be placing it whenever he wants to, and then cycling to another one if he chooses, or play slow. There's so many options for him, and it's one of those beautiful things in Clash Royale when you have so many options and all of them are the right one.
Great recognition there from Vitor, knowing that the opponent's Tesla was not back in cycle. You see him sending that Hog Rider to a Mega Minion, Cannon, Cart, and the Archers, I believe, are Barb Barrel, and still gets a hit, which is just brutal when you talk about where he's at. But the Cannon Cart does connect to the tower. That is crazy stuff. Hog pushes it away. 5-10 remains, but that is not what you want to see, and that's back on the tower, Josh. That's exactly what we're talking about with this deck. You make one mistake, Sandbox capitalizes. I can't believe what we just saw. 368 on the bottom right-hand tower. That's just a couple spell cycles away, man.
Yeah, I cannot believe it happens in that fashion. I mean, the Musketeer just does not do enough. The Inferno Tower, it's great, but I mean, that's the reason why we don't see Inferno Tower in the meta. He has Cannon Cart, Mega Minion. Inferno Tower individually does super well, but when all those stack and you have the Bar Barrel to protect your troops when you place it on top of the Inferno Tower directly, I mean, he gets a little too aggressive with that Hog. If he plays a little bit more defensively, he probably wins that easily. I mean, hindsight is, 2020, but that just unfortunate for him.
Yeah, Valkyrie hanging out in no man's land. We see the Hog Rider reset here, but then we've got nothing to defend. Valkyrie low, not enough elixir to get another Inferno down. Valkyrie comes down a second late, and Sandbox locks it in. Beautiful stuff there. That last Hog Rider, while in the moment it looked kind of, it looked like it was going to work out. He was able to get past the Valkyrie, past the Cannon Cart, past the Mega Minion for another shot in on the tower, which made it in a very, very easy spell cycle. But Sandbox capitalizes when in that moment, Vitor should have just played defense, got another Inferno down, and started that Earthquake cycle to close the game out. Just not able to do it because he got too aggressive. And hey, man, that's maybe why Sandbox got that 70% vote.
Right. I mean... He had it, and everything kind of just came crashing down. Nothing he could do once he had all those troops going down the field. Great attempt with the Hog, but maybe you can try and push it off with Skellies or Ice Spirit or Log or anything like that. Using a defensive Hog in that scenario just is never going to be the right answer. Even if you do push it off, we see that he immediately is able to still allow the Cannon Cart to lock on. There just has to be better options. And again, it comes down to the experience of the pro players who've been there before. They don't make those mistakes at the end of the games.
Yeah, I mean, I was really surprised to see how aggressive Vitor stayed when he had that much damage down early on. I mean, even as we got into double elixir, he had such a substantial lead that, the Earthquake cycles would have been nice to see at some point, but just didn't happen. Stayed aggressive, and Sandbox capitalizes, and now we see a really nice push here. P.E.K.K.A will get pulled away, but that Ewa is going to do some good damage.
Yeah, a huge mistake from Sandbox. Could have played the Fisherman a little bit better and not allowed the P.E.K.K.A to get onto the tower. So that's something he definitely has to make sure that he doesn't. I mean, I'm just shocked that he makes that mistake in that scenario, because right now he should be in the lead. Instead, 300 HP separated into two, 400 HP separated into two.
Go Dark Prince out in both direction. This one's going to demand a response. Fisherman comes out. Not a lot the Fish Boy has to worry about pulling too close to tower, as we see Sandbox's threat is coming from the skies.
And so we saw Sandbox shake his head again. I don't know if he just likes shaking his head at this point and if it allows him to power up. And right there, Lava going against Ewiz and Mega Minion. It's definitely going to depend on the last two cards if he should be not feeling very confident. But so far, in a pretty good spot. Ewiz out of cycle. Maybe he can get aggressive here.
I like that Dark Prince there. It distracts the Inferno from getting on top of the Mega Minion. Dark Prince does connect the tower. We get some skeletons on the tower as well. Going to bring it down below 700 HP. And then a pretty easy defense here on the opposite side with those pups going off the board. But still a decent counter push coming in. Miner going to go right on top of that Fish Boy. Everything piling up here at the bridge. And I don't know if I love that Electro Wizard.
Yeah, I mean, it is just so much going down. And right here, we get the reset. The great thing about that, Fireball out of cycle, King Tower activated, he doesn't have to worry about these pushes. If his opponent goes Dark Prince at the bridge, and you know that he's going to come in with the Graveyard, he just protects it at the bridge. What I do like right here is that P.E.K.K.A, but I don't think it's going to be in time. I don't know. I think he's just trying to get the tower down, but I think a two-tower situation is much better for Sandbox.
Yeah.
I would have maybe liked to see him trying to defend. And right there, Sandbox, poor Miner, just has to understand the tower is gone. I know it's difficult to think that way when you want to try and stop it, but definitely in that position, he should have just reset.
It felt like he was okay to sacrifice the tower and then wanted to make a last-ditch effort to keep it alive, but the Miner just not going to be able to do it on top of the skeletons. He stopped the Dark Prince, but there was already skeletons on the board. We see Sandbox shaking his head a lot, and that's because that P.E.K.K.A's on the tower with the Dark Prince. Miner comes in late, and that is going to do it. Tower down. Vitor taking us to game number 3.
Wow, and I mean, it is the tale of two games. Game number 1, Vitor gets too aggressive, and we see him throw away what's considered a lock. Game 2, same thing happens in the opposite way. Gets too aggressive. Lava at the bridge when 4 troops are coming down at the when it's 1 tower to 1 tower. You can't do that. You have to go all out defense. And right there at the end of the game as well, we saw just P.E.K.K.A coming down the field. You got to be okay with that. You can't defend with minor. And the reason why, we saw it right there, too many troops.
That's right. And you see this last second defense. I don't know if we're going to get to it on the highlights. We're still a little bit ahead of that here. This was a nice strike back from Sandbox. He gets the second Lava Hound down. Then we see the tower trade here. We see that last second minor maybe at the end of this clip, and that 3 elixir would have been really nice to have on the other end of it when we talk about it going to a 2-tower game. There's the minor coming in, and this massive overwhelm. P.E.K.K.A, Dark Prince, minor, Mega Minion, all on the other side of it. Just a lowly Lava Hound chilling by itself on the tower. Not what you want to see there. And honestly, if we're talking about this matchup so far, Josh, Vitor has had a lot more control, or at least been a little bit more dominant. It was just that misplay at the end of game 1 that's keeping him from ending out this set, staying in the winner's bracket. But now we're going to game number 3.
Right. I mean, confidence-wise, he's got to feel good. You know, deck choices have been solid. He's played a good game. He's put himself in positions to win, and he's made his opponent make mistakes. That's what you have to do if you want to win. And so game number 3, if he picks a good deck, has at least a somewhat okay matchup, I would feel pretty confident if I'm Vitor or a fan of Vitor.
Neither of these gentlemen have used the drill yet in this set, and I'm really glad that you used the word confidence, because that's exactly what I was worried he wasn't going to have after dropping game number 1. But a brilliant bounce back in game number 2, bringing us to our final match, final game of the day. One of these guys is going to stay up in the winner's bracket. One of them is going to have to go down and face off against what's been a really competitive elimination bracket, but we'll get to that in just a second here as game 3 is underway. We see Princess, Royal Ghost, Bandit at the top. We've seen this a bit. I've actually been having quite a bit of fun playing this. Usually not with the Spear Goblins, though. And, of course, Electro Giant bottom of your screen.
And then Sandbox going to be running what looks to be the Lightning version. Bait going against E-Giant. This is going to be very interesting to see how this goes for the rest of this game. Magic Archer is going to make this a lot more manageable because it allows him to play a lot slower, get a lot of value with a Magic Archer when Baby Dragon or Ice Wizard wouldn't have. And yeah, I'm very excited to see as the game goes along. Maybe Vitor has to get really aggressive until we get to triple, because once triple happens, I don't know if he's going to be able to stop any pushes.
Took the words right out of my mouth. I'm looking to see some hyper aggression here out of Vitor, especially here in single elixir, not allowing his opponent to stack up too many of those E-Giant. Sandbox gets it down as his second card played, but these princesses stacking up, you get those drills in, the Bandit up front, or even the Royal Ghost. It becomes pretty hard to manage, especially when you look at how expensive the deck is out of Sandbox.
I like that Magic Archer right there because he's trying to catch the Spear Goblins that are placed in the middle while also getting the Princess as well. But really good recognition from Vitor. This is going to be a nice push, and right here, I love the aggressiveness. 60 seconds left. Not going to get that much damage from it. Actually, a very clean defense from Sandbox, but still up 800 HP.
Yeah, you see Vitor not too happy about that. He does get a good amount of damage in, as you're just saying, Josh, but that comes at the cost of the activation on that King Tower. That's why the Bandit was able to connect, which is going to make it a lot more difficult for Vitor late game to have as much effectiveness offensively in the opposite lane, which is what we're seeing right now.
This is a really smart opposite lane pressure, and it forces Sandbox to defend with the Baby Dragon. And that, 4 HP that's allocated to the Baby Dragon can be the difference to make it so that his pushes aren't as strong. But a lot coming down the lane, the Prince could be the difference in this, and that could be the game.
That was an insane amount of value from the Prince. You see it getting tossed around because Vitor is using the Spear Goblins, then the Bandit to get it off the board, but the Prince just getting so much value in. Now that E-Giant working towards the tower. There we see the Lightning down, and that is going to do it.
Wow, I mean, every game was kind of just everything happening all at once. So many different lead changes. What a set right there. Sandbox celebrating, showing to the cameras. And yeah, I mean, the Prince right there, definitely a difference maker. And the Magic Archer as well, able to get so much value, sniping on the right side, sniping the Princess, and still getting offensive pressure. Just impressive game.
I love the decision making here by Sandbox throughout. He knew exactly when to take damage and how much he needed to spend defensively just to make sure the game didn't get out of control. Right here is exactly what I'm talking about. You see this great push on the right-hand side. He defends only with the Baby Dragon, and then you said, Josh, that really nice high magic archer. It demands so much out of his opponent, and then the Prince goes to work on the left-hand side, which was actually between the two clips that we just saw. We all know how quickly a game can go downhill when you can't control that Prince, and he just did not have enough single target DPS on the Prince specifically because he was so focused. Vitor was so focused on getting that Electro Giant off the board. Really nice composure there from Sandbox, and he knew exactly when to strike.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to I complimented Vitor on pressuring opposite lane. He goes in with the Bandit, he goes in with the Goblin Drill, forces out the Baby Dragon, and yes, he did force out 4 Elixir that wasn't able to get any offensive value. But when you're going against the Magic Archer variation, you have to understand he can defend the right lane and still get value on the left. We saw it was able to get so much value, everything compounding together. And yeah, I really like Sandbox's games.
Yeah, it was really, really nice stuff there. You know, looking back at it, I guess we'll talk about it in a second when we get to the deck 3 breakdown. But here we go. Game number 1, Vitor completely in control for what felt like, 4 minutes and 50 seconds. But that last little bit, the cannon cart sneaks through, no defense there, no Inferno Tower down. A Hog Rider comes out, pushes it back out of range, but then not enough elixir or time to get the Valkyrie down. Valkyrie comes in a second late, cannon cart back on tower, and Sandbox steals game number 1. When we get to game number 2, Vitor playing really, really nice here and able to go to the 2-tower game. Sandbox maybe just overspent defensively when it was still that 2-tower game, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, Vitor only has Ewiz and Mega Minion and no Ram Rider, so you have to assume that the Lava Loon deck is going to have, you know, not necessarily the advantage, but definitely an easier time. And a lot of it comes down to, I was trying to figure out what happened. What was the one mistake that he made? You know, was it the miner? Was it this? Was it that? I think it really comes down to, with only, you know, 20 seconds left in the game, he adds the Loon to the lava that was already down on the field. If he just goes lava and protects the Inferno Dragon from getting caught by the Ewiz, that can be the difference where he defends easily, kites with the Dark Prince, kites with the Fisherman, and then uses the Skeleton Dragons on whatever. I think that would have been enough for him to lock up the victory. The Loon was just too much for him to be able to go on offense and still defend.
And Vitor had no problem taking that off the board. As we get to deck number 3, what we just saw, you know, the Bandit is always a great response to come out on top of that Prince, but the Bandit was used on the right-hand side. And even then, with the Bandit coming out and dashing on the Prince, there was just so much of his damage. Because you look, he doesn't have a ocean or a mountain of single target DPS. He has a lot of great splash damage. He has a lot of good bait. He's got a lot of great pressure. But when you talk about that E-Giant with just the Prince, that alone became almost impossible to defend because he just wasn't able to focus on either one of them effectively.
Yeah, I mean, there was too much going down the field. Even if he had protected, because the thing is, even if he goes in with the defensive Bandit instead of using it on offense, he's still able to just NATO it inside, and then the Bandit doesn't get the charge, and then the Prince is able to still kill it off. I mean, we can say all we want to, but I don't know if he really had any opportunity to play it any better.
Yeah.
And I mean, with someone like Sandbox, he's going to recognize that, and it was just, I mean, it was just over.
That's why he was so okay taking that much damage in certain points, because he knew eventually, and you called it early, once he got to double and eventually triple, that he was just going to overrun his opponents. So, Josh, it's always a pleasure casting with you, my brother. We're going to see you back again tomorrow. Of course, I'm excited to hear your thoughts after we've been able to sleep on it a little bit. And I'm also excited to see the meta switch up. But as we say goodbye to AC, we're going to bring back my brother from another mother, Rich Slayton, to talk about our bracket breakdown. Man, what did you get to take away from these last few matches?
Well, you know, it's interesting seeing the rookies have a big step up today. Good opportunities for both of them tomorrow. Enjoy seeing Coco, who's an 8K player with Logbait, playing Logbait here on CRL in that big Game 3 moment. So much fun to watch that. But the most exciting thing for me, Andrew, is the match that I wanted to see. A match that we could get twice, potentially, and that's Molite versus Sandbox.
Yeah, that is going to be such a great match tomorrow. Staying up in the winner's side of the bracket, Mohamed Light and Sandbox. They get a sweep in their first round. They go 2-1 in their second over Dark Angel and Vitor, who both head down to the elimination side. We will not start our day tomorrow with Mo and Sandbox. We're going to start right there with Vitor and Bruzani, the rookie who has played really, really well and also had the big time upset over Surge TS. And then Coco and Dark Angel, a matchup that would be just as likely to be seen up in the winner side of the bracket down here, playing for their lives in match number 10. A lot of exciting stuff in tomorrow's day number 2.
Yeah, it's curious to see what kind of preparation they do between now and then. You know, a lot of these guys have some game plans locked in, but you're seeing some different guys you didn't plan for. You know, you saw your side of the bracket, so now I'm very curious, especially with that Coco versus Dark Angel matchup, what kind of things they have in the works for that one. But man, Molite and Sandbox, number 1 versus number 6, that's a huge one.
Yeah, so remember, guys, to join us tomorrow. Of course, we're going to be back for giving away another $20,000+. I mean, $20,000 just goes to the winner. There's still a lot more to give away there. So just remember, you can compete in CRL. I guess if you haven't made it in the top 1,000, you haven't made it in the top 8, you probably can't go to World Finals, but you can still win some points. You can still win a lot of cash, $1.6 million given away this year. We're probably about 2/3 of the way through that prize pool, and Mohamed Light and Lucas X Gamer have taken a good portion of that. But Rich, anyone can be here, and we could call your matches.
Yeah, you could be here next week. Bruzani, not going to make it to World Finals, but has a shot at that big prize, has a shot at that big money. So very excited to see one more month after this one of competitive Clash Royale before we get into those last chance qualifiers and that World Championship. And it's been so fun so far, but man, we are just ramping up to what's going to be a great finish to the year.
And what a shocking display of decks we saw. I think a lot of people were expecting Golem first play, Lava first play, but it really was about the Graveyards and the Royal Hogs that came out to play today. We'll see if that changes its tune tomorrow, or if we just stick in. I love that you said it. It's like a one-day meta. We'll see if it becomes a one weekend or a finals meta here today and tomorrow.
Yeah, very, very possible. You know, you never know how the ebbs and flows happen. We're reaching the end of our third quarter of the year, so keep in mind that as we go into the fourth and final quarter, we could expect some big changes. So who knows what those last chance qualifiers, what World Finals will have in store for us, Andrew. It could be absolutely wild.
That's right, man. And you know what? I'm just as excited to be back here tomorrow. We've got a few more players to eliminate, a lot more money to give away, and of course, that leaderboard battle that's going on. Sandbox still in the hunt to secure his spot in that top 24.
That's going to be it for today. Come back here tomorrow, same place, same time. Cannot wait for Josh, for Eric, for Andrew, all of us here at Clash Royale League. Always remember to be excellent to each other.
Bye.